All righty. Welcome to the regular city council meeting of March 7th, 2022. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is now 6:30. Please stand and join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Government Code Section 54953, Subdivision E, and the recommendation of the Ventura County Health Officer issued September 21st, 2021, following social distancing recommendations and determination most recently by the City Council on February 22nd, 2022. The public was informed in advance of the meeting how to submit all public comments to our city clerk, and all submissions will be read in and part of the official meeting record. Live participation is accessed through the meeting Zoom link published on the agenda, and we highly encourage and welcome the community's participation. Those attending will have multiple opportunities throughout the meeting to provide public comments. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll call?
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Here.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Present.
Mayor Rollins,
Here.
all present.
At this time, we will hear the inspiration by Councilman Gama. Can you please provide the inspiration for tonight?
Thank you. I'm going to need just a little bit of assistance. And there it is. Let me know when you're ready, Charles. No, I'm not muted. That was my wife checking in on me.
Councilmember Gama, I pulled up the document. I'm having a little trouble going to the slideshow feature, but give me just one moment.
Okay. So I'll just say that I was planning to do a different inspiration, and then when I went to the robotics, it inspired me to focus on the youth in our community and some of the great programs going on to help them. So I threw together a slideshow of my experiences with the different youth organizations in and around our community. And many of them have participated with us down at Hueneme Beach Cleanup. And a lot of my inspiration, as you know, this Saturday was wicked. I mean, wicked is being nice. It was windy beyond anyone's wildest belief. And we had a very large project planned for Hueneme Beach Cleanup where it involved the city staff, other organizations, and moving dumpsters down into the Ormond Lagoon area so that we could retrieve all the rain rubbish from the lagoon. And I was sitting there in the morning being blown, literally almost being blown over. I mean, the wind was so strong, I think you all noticed. And I was thinking, nobody's gonna show up. And much to my surprise, we had a large group of volunteers show up, various organizations, students, and so that kind of prompted me to go through and talk about a lot of the youth organizations in our community. So Charles is working feverishly, I'm sure, to bring this to you, and I'm trying to avoid what they call dead air time. And later on in our agenda, we are going to be considering a youth program with the Boys and Girls Greater Oxnard, Port Hueneme area, which is amazing. And they're represented in my slide as well. So hopefully we'll be rifling through this as quick as possible.
Councilmember, I apologize. I'm trying to pull up the file that you provided and the
March
document.
7th, Inspire.
Perhaps you can verbally give it.
It's photograph motivated. It was up there, Charles. I mean, we could do it in not the slideshow version if you wish.
Yeah, based on the size of the file, my computer is not accepting it any longer. I closed out and tried to reopen it, and I'm having all kinds of difficulty here. I'll keep trying, but my computer is not cooperating, so I apologize.
Do you want to just move on and come back to it, Mayor Rollins? Would that be okay?
I would like to do that. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to move on to the agenda approval. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So move.
Approve.
Madam Clerk, will you please take a vote?
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first and the second. Who was the?
I provided the first.
The first was Gama, second was, I think, Misty, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry, Councilperson Ms. Perez.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. So now we will move. Okay, before that though, I guess I jumped the gun a little. We're going to have general public comment. We will now hear from any general public comments not pertaining to the items on the agenda, including those written comments received by our city clerk. Any comments from those who are participating live with us this evening, we will ask you to Zoom to raise your hand. Use the Zoom raise your hand feature so we can call on you during the appropriate comment times. This will be the same process for the comments pertaining to each agenda item as well. Staff, will you unmute your mic, and staff will unmute your mic, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Do we have any public comments tonight, Madam Clerk?
I do have one written public comment that I can read for the record.
Please do.
This is from Ronald Arroyo. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Ronald Arroyo from Oxnard, California. For the record, I am the Vice Chair of Oxnard's Planning Commission, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. I'm here this evening to thank Councilwoman Misty Perez for agreeing to group up her application with my own and my fellow Planning Commission members, Chair Daniel Chavez Jr. and Member Catherine Connolly, to SCAG's Housing Policy Leadership Academy, a 10-session training for emerging and established community leaders who want to better understand how to advance policy solutions to increase the supply and availability of affordable housing. While our respective applications have to stand on their own for selection into this academy, one of the ways to make our applications stand out was to group up with local applicants and additionally be headed by an elected official. When I asked Councilwoman Perez if she would be willing to serve as the elected official component of our grouped applications, she excitedly agreed to it. I do believe that while all of our individual applications would have gotten the 4 of us selected, I thank Councilwoman Perez for making them even stronger. As someone who used to work for a city surrounded by another city approximately 10 times its population, I definitely understand that there are some areas in which cities will compete with each other. However, I believe that there are even more topics in which adjacent municipalities not only complement, but also give synergies to each other. I'm looking forward to engaging with Councilwoman Perez and everyone else in the Academy on ideas to increase the supply and availability of affordable housing on both Oxnard and Port Hueneme throughout this year. Thank you kindly.
So do we have any other written comments?
That was the only written comment that I have.
So now we would move on to the.
Excuse me, Mayor. Mr. Kenny has his hand up.
I was going to say, now we're going to move on to our in-person comments. So thank you. So Mr. Kinney, I see your hand is raised.
It is, Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Steve Kinney. I'm here tonight as the president of the REACH Board of Directors, and it gives me extraordinary pleasure to introduce to all of you Ms. Maya Zumaya, who the REACH Board engaged last week to be its first executive director, as well as the festival manager for the Wainimi Beach Festival for this year and beyond. This represents a major step forward for REACH. It's the first time in the 7-year existence of this small community nonprofit that we have a staff resource to carry out a lot of the dreams and desires of the board and the people who come to the board. So I look forward to a major change in the profile of our organization and in the impact which we hope to have in the community as well. Beyond those two duties that I just mentioned, Maya will also be the resource to the city for certain special events during the course of this year under the contract which you all just approved several weeks ago. So Maya is going to be the go-to person for an awful lot of important activity this year, and it really gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce her to you tonight. Maya, I see you are here, so please say hello.
Yes, thank you, Steve, and thank you everybody for having me. I'm really excited to serve the city of Port Hueneme through my position at REACH, and I can't wait to work with all of you and hear what we can accomplish together for the city of Port Hueneme.
Thank you, Maya, for coming on board and helping REACH. I've known Maya for approximately a year, and I feel confident that her enthusiasm and energy will bring REACH to newer and better heights, and we can, so welcome aboard. All right, any
Great.
other?
Thank you for your time, Mayor, Council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any other public comments tonight? Madam Clerk,
I don't have any other written comments.
do we have any other on-board comments? I see many, many names up there tonight. Okay, so hearing that there are no on-board comments tonight from the community, we will now move to our presentation.
Mayor, before we go to presentations, if we could give Councilmember Gama's inspiration one more shot here. I think our IT manager, Aaron, is able to run it from his computer, so we're gonna see if that's more successful.
Okay, great.
Aaron, if you would please share your screen and try to run the PowerPoint.
Are we doing? Shall we move on, or do you think we got it pretty quickly?
Getting communication that he is having difficulty as well.
So in the convenience of time, I think we'll move forward, and at any point in time during the meeting when appropriate, we'll have Councilman Gama be able to provide his presentation. So at this point in time, I'd like to move on to presentations. The first one is the vacant property report being given by our city attorney, Mr. Spalding.
Good evening, Mayor Rollins and honorable council members. Many of you may remember that a few months ago, there were some questions regarding vacant properties. within the city and what options the city could conceivably take to deal with vacant properties that don't rise to the level of public nuisance per se, as well as trying to encourage owners to develop or do something with those properties. If you give me a moment, I will share my screen. All right. Okay. And so there are a host of things that go into addressing vacant properties from a legal standpoint. And a number of municipalities handle this a number of different ways, but I think it's important to start with some nomenclature as well as some distinguishing characteristics. So we have several types of vacant properties, arguably within the city, and most cities encounter the same thing. The first of these are undeveloped properties. These are just empty lots. Typically, there are no structures, they're vacant land. They're things that look like our Market Street property that we're in current development talks with the port. Then there are developed and unused properties. These are commercial or residential properties that are developed, but they're not currently being used for their intended purposes. These properties can range anywhere from being in a complete state of repair. They're not a danger to anybody. They don't represent any health, safety, or welfare concerns. Or they can be what we call nuisance properties in that they represent significant health risks, significant risks to the general public safety, health, and welfare. And they can even become an attractive nuisance to minors or vagrants and the like. According to California Civil Code, Section 3479, a nuisance is anything injurious to health, indecent or offensive to the senses, or an obstruction to the free use of property that causes interference. Even within the legal definition of nuisance, we find that we have different types. We have public versus private nuisances. A public nuisance is one that affects the entire neighborhood or community at the same time. In essence, a public nuisance affects rights that are common to the public generally. Typically in recent times when we hear about a public nuisance, we can think of the natural gas leak in Porter Ranch. That was a significant threat to public health, safety, and welfare, and it affected members of that community on a fairly equal basis. The distinction between a public and private nuisance is that a private nuisance, as defined by the Civil Code, is a non-trespassory interference with a private use and enjoyment of land. Essentially, the difference really is the number of people affected and whether it has an injurious effect on the general public health, safety, and welfare. So, for example, somebody interfering with a landowner's private use or quiet enjoyment of their property would rise to the level of a private nuisance. The reason these distinctions are important is because local agencies, city governments and whatnot, do not have the ability to enforce private nuisances. We may only regulate or use code enforcement against public nuisances, that is, things that affect the public health, safety, and welfare. And so the problem is that when you get into nuisance law and whatnot, we run into an issue where unless there are some factors that affect public safety, health, the general public safety, health, and welfare, vacant undeveloped properties or even vacant developed properties become difficult to regulate and become difficult to have any effect with any code enforcement. There's simply nothing to regulate if there is no danger to life or welfare. So in the city's municipal code, section 10226 lists a number of factors relating to property maintenance prohibitions, as well as other factors that the city takes into account when addressing nuisance properties or things that the city would like to see brought back into code or repaired. Among these things are buildings left in partial construction after expiration of a building permit, buildings susceptible to dry rot or infestation, broken windows or doors, unsightly or deteriorated exteriors, overgrown or unmaintained vegetation, unlawful storage of machinery, equipment, or vehicles, hazardous pools, ponds, or excavations, and junk storage. Now, like I said, the problem comes into play when a property is vacant, it's unused for its intended purpose. It might not fall into a state of disrepair to the state that our municipal code can cover it. And then the question is what options does the city have? And there are primarily two schools of thought on this. We're going to start with the first one, which is the City of Oakland approach. On November 6, 2018, voters in the City of Oakland approved Measure W, which instituted a parcel tax on vacant properties ranging from $3,000 to $6,000 a year. The reason it was a parcel tax and the reason it's given a set value comes in, I'll discuss this a little bit later. This has to do with Propositions 13 and 26 and how municipalities can levy taxes against real property. But essentially in California, it is illegal to pass a property tax that is based on a fair market value or a percentage thereof. So under the City of Oakland approach, the city assesses $3,000 for vacant condos, duplexes, or townhomes that are all under separate ownership. It also assesses $3,000 for parcels with a ground floor and that allows for commercial activity. These are typically your mixed-use developments where you have an apartment on top of a storefront. And then $6,000 for residential properties, $6,000 for non-residential, and $6,000 for undeveloped. Under Measure W, under the City of Oakland's idea, their property tax assessment or parcel tax assessment, a property is vacant if it is in use less than 50 days per calendar year. Now, in response to overwhelming public criticism as well as a court action, the City of Oakland amended this by November 19th, 2019, Ordinance 13571, which defined 10 exemptions to its vacant property parcel tax. Among these, most of these deal with financial hardship conditions. So you have people with very low income, financial hardship, demonstrable hardship unrelated to personal finances, exceptional specific circumstances, active construction, building permit application. In essence, they're trying to correct and remediate the property and it's uninhabitable at the time. Low income seniors, disabled owners, nonprofit organization is the owner, or substantially complete application for planning. And so we'll see this trend a little bit unfold with both of the measures, but in essence, there are some abilities to avoid the hardship of, let's say, a $6,000 per year assessment against a residential property that is vacant, unoccupied more than 50 days a year, but is not in a state of disrepair and doesn't represent a danger to the public. Conversely, the City of West Hollywood in 2019 passed Ordinance 19-1090. And this is the other approach that's taken throughout, I believe, City of Detroit. It went this way, and you'll see this a lot in cities where you'll see either of these regimes in cities where they have a vast number of vacant commercial or residential properties, and it's becoming a blight, so to speak. So Detroit kind of highlights a lot of this. And what the West Hollywood Ordinance does is it assesses annual fees against properties to prevent them from becoming nuisance properties. West Hollywood's goal here is to prevent increased municipal liability as well as prevent increasing code enforcement costs by putting the onus on the property owner before anything happens. And so under the West Hollywood definition, a vacant property is any property that is substantially vacant, unoccupied, or abandoned for a period of 45 days. Substantially vacant means less than 25% of all available units or floor space are unoccupied. And then even further, West Hollywood classifies these properties into 4 categories. These categories are stable, at risk, problematic, and failed. I apologize for the size of the image here. I hope everybody can see it, but it was difficult to fit in a slide. These distinctions, so we'll look at stable first, and these are properties that are well maintained. They can easily be converted back to their intended uses. And there's really nothing in a state of disrepair here. And so what the City of West Hollywood requires is that a property owner who owns one of these properties, whose property is vacant, to fill out a form and basically request that since there's no history of vacant status and the property is not in a state of disrepair, that they can waive fees. If there is, however, a history of vacancy with respect to this property, regardless of whether or not it's in a state of disrepair, there will be a fee of $740 a year assessed against this property. At-risk properties are those properties that are maintained to a lesser degree than stable, but they can be returned to their intended use with minor repairs. And for properties that register under this or are identified as this category, the payment is $4,400 annually. Problematic properties are properties that have fallen into disrepair but can be converted can be converted back to their intended use with some substantial repairs. The important distinction with this one is that the structures themselves are not unsafe.
Kevin, we can't hear you unless if you're talking.
Okay. Where did I lose you guys?
Or the end of that,
Number 3, I think you're about to start with.
yeah.
Okay.
Problematic.
So problematic properties. Problematic properties are those properties that have fallen into a state of disrepair, but with substantial repairs, they can be converted back to their intended uses. The important thing to note here with problematic properties is that the structures themselves are not unsafe. There may be some intrusion, and what we mean by intrusion is that vagrants, squatters, mischievous persons have found their way into the property. It's not required for a problematic property, but this is kind of where we're starting to see evidence that these properties might start representing a risk to the general public's health, safety, and welfare. And West Hollywood assesses a fee of $8,800 annually for these properties. And then we have failed, and these properties are generally not maintained. They pose significant risks to health, safety, and welfare. The structures are likely unsafe, and there's an assessment of $26,640 annually on these properties. It's important to note here that with respect to potentially problematic properties as well as failed properties, traditional code enforcement methods are still available, as are things like the state housing law, where we get into health and safety code receiverships and any of the remedies available to local agencies pursuant to, I think it's Health and Safety Code section 1790-20. And so what West Hollywood did is, in addition to state remedies with respect to state housing law, and in addition, the City of West Hollywood ordinance applies to commercial properties, not just housing and residential. So if we look at the purposes of the City of West Hollywood ordinance, the payments appear to be generated to cover code enforcement costs and inspections in order to prevent properties from falling into a state of disrepair and prevent enforcement of nuisance property ordinances. And it's in essence a way to front load and try to correct this. There's some danger in this approach in that under Proposition 26, if you're assessing any dollar amount against a property for any reason, it has to be reasonably calculated to the actual costs incurred by the city. Otherwise, what you find is the city didn't actually make an assessment. They instituted a tax in violation of Proposition 26, and any tax has to go to the voters. And so the way that this starts is every property owner at the beginning of the year has to go and fill out a property owner registration where they have to identify what state their property is, whether it's stable, at risk, or failed, or whatever. And then they can request an exemption as to why they shouldn't be required to pay any of this. But what it does is it gets these properties on a routine checkup by code enforcement, who then goes out and inspects the property, confirms the proper designation, confirms the proper fee amount, and then keeps an eye on that property. And where we see this happening is if there are violations found on these vacant properties, property owners are cited, in addition to a $50 administrative fee, they're cited $1,000, $2,000, and $5,000 for first, second, and third violations. And as I stated at the bottom, property owners can request waiver or modification of annual fees when registering their vacant properties. In addition to the West Hollywood approach and the City of Oakland approach in California, there are a couple of bills of interest that are before the state legislature at the moment. And it's important to note that many of these bills in the state legislature are directly looking at the state's housing crisis. So they don't much concern themselves with commercial properties. It's really just residential that the state is focused on. And so Senate Bill 1079 attempts to reduce the number of vacant homes in California by giving tenants a right of first refusal to purchase the home. In essence, what this means is that if we have a home that's being foreclosed upon by a bank or something like that, and it has renters in it, this bill would require the bank prior to selling off or auctioning, would require the bank to offer the house to the tenants who live in it so that fewer people are displaced. Should the tenants not purchase the home, then we end up with nonprofits, land trusts, local agencies would be provided an opportunity. We see kind of a similar procedure in the Surplus Lands Act, and that seems to be the way the state's thinking about this. In addition, it allows local agencies the ability to levy fines against corporations who own residential properties, who keep those properties vacant for more than 90 days. And so as we're starting to see more and more property management companies keeping properties vacant in order to increase rental value for the supply, local agencies, if this bill passes, will likely have many more enforcement tools to prevent that, many more fine authority and whatnot, and hopefully some more stick to the carrot with when it comes to these landowners. This was signed by Governor Newsom on September 28th, 2020. I believe it's still meandering its way through appropriations and whatnot, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with respect to how enforcement is doled out and what this ends up looking like. And once again, this only applies to residential properties. So some of the vacant, developed commercial properties that the city council was concerned about would not be affected by this. In addition, there's Senate Bill 15. This one is currently active in the state legislature. What this does is this augments local assistance grants to local governments. And this specifically has to do with vacant commercial properties. And so if there was a big box store, let's say a Home Depot or a Walgreens or something that had significant commercial square footage, if that property is idle, which means that it's at least 80% of it is unoccupied for a 12-month period, what a local agency would be allowed to do would be to get a local assistance grant equal to the estimated 7 years sales tax revenue that store would generate had it been opened. And then the local agency would be required to rezone the property to allow residential development for low income and very low income. And then in essence, auction it off similarly to the Surplus Lands Act process where nonprofits and low and very low income persons can bid to build out the residency. And so a lot of the things coming from California, as I said, are really geared towards increasing California's supply of low to very low income housing. But at least this bill does allow the city council to do something with respect to vacant commercial properties. So when we look at Measure W, the city of Oakland's tax measure, it's important to note that it is in fact a tax. It is a parcel tax. And so following the passage of Proposition 13 in California, ad valorem property taxes are limited to 1% of the fair market value. There's simply no way to increase it. Non-ad valorem parcel taxes may be approved as a special tax under the California Constitution. What this means is that a special tax requires a 2/3 approval of the voters. So when we're talking about something similar to what City of Oakland did, is you need a 66.6% vote of the public at either a general or special election. This would require the city to put forth a ballot measure or the citizens to bring forth their own initiative and follow that process to put something like that on. The other thing that it would do is it would be subject to referendum. I know many people within Port Hueneme are familiar with the referendum process. We've seen it used somewhat recently with water rate increases in a neighboring city. And so there is some danger as well as significant expense in going the parcel tax route because it's a ballot measure. It would have to be brought forth a general election or a special election. It would have to be drafted and approved by the council at least 120 days before. And generally, there's not a lot of public appetite for parcel taxes. However, it is still an option, and it is one that City of Oakland has decided to go with. And that is what I've got. So I will open this up for questions to see if anybody has anything specific they would like to discuss.
I don't see any questions. I just had one question. I see. Let me finish mine, then I'll move over to you, Councilman Gama. The question is, based on the West Hollywood or the Oakland, or in particular the West Hollywood one, would we be able to do an assessment as to how many properties that we have that fall into those categories?
Yeah, we can, if you're looking for just a count or a survey as to how many properties would fall into a category if we adopted something similar to what West Hollywood did, I'm sure we could do that rather quickly and provide an approximate number of properties.
Yeah, I think, I would, I'm sure the council would want to know as if we were to move through with any of these things, like how many properties it would affect and how it would affect Port Hueneme. Councilman Gama.
Thank you, Kevin, for your PowerPoint presentation. I got two questions. keeping rental properties vacant to increase rent. Is there actual data on that, or are there other reasons? I mean, because we've had a couple, that's one of the questions I have is like, okay, so we have a couple properties that are vacant and it seems to be a failing business plan, or maybe there's something else occurring.
The data that I have on it, or the data that I've seen, is largely anecdotal, and a lot of it is from the Bay Area. And so there was concern that certain corporate entities own significant numbers of properties. And what they were doing was they were, in essence, keeping the housing market or the rental market scarce so that it could demand higher values. And once you have a Prop 13 system in place, property becomes less expensive to hold on to. There's not much motivation to sell it. And so that was kind of the argument, is that property owners can buy property, hold on to it, do nothing with it. There's no financial harm for it.
Okay, and then my second question is significant square footage now relative to what? In Oxnard, perhaps a 10,000 square foot commercial property wouldn't be significant because they have so many buildings much larger. But in our city, take Mary's Market, for example, that's probably in par to the biggest commercial building we have, or close to it. So I was just wondering how, what's it compared to? Is it city by city, or?
I don't think it's city by city. I think what they're really talking about is 80% of the square footage of a location left empty. So it's kind of like it's the ratio of usable area that's not being used is really what I believe it's Senate Bill 19 is what that's really focused on.
Okay, and then the only other comment I would have is that really appreciate the legal side of all this, but what about, and I guess this is more to the city manager, like what about the personal side, like communicating and seeking out the owners and, hey, what are your ideas? What can we do to encourage you? Or it would be nice if we could establish some kind of dialogue with these properties, because, the graffiti, I understand the difference, how difficult it is to get a public nuisance, but I'm sure the property owner is dealing with all the costs associated to stay healthy looking. So anyways, that's a comment for our city manager later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gamble. We do frequent updates and outreach to all landholders that are in possession of what we would consider through the various categories that Kevin detailed, vacant properties. And so it's a continuous effort in order to encourage them, nudge them, and hopefully ultimately lead to a development or a sale of property so that others can develop it.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins, and thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. I would like to know what you would recommend if we take an Oakland or a West Hollywood approach for our situation in our city. And I think you understand our situation, but if you don't, I can clarify it just a tiny bit, at least from my point of view.
I do, and my recommendation is an Oakland situation is very involved. And we're talking from a city's perspective, the city would probably spend $250,000 on a ballot measure that probably will not pass. Special taxes are very difficult to get through. And then even if it does, it would be subject to referendum. In all honesty, in my opinion, and I'm speaking a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, so please take this with a grain of salt. The cities that are looking at things like that are cities like West Hollywood, Detroit, Chicago, Oakland. They have 50% of their downtown area vacant. They have tremendous number of vacant properties and a burgeoning homeless population, and they're facing a threat that Port Hueneme faces, but on a much larger scale. And that's the justification for a lot of these type of measures. If Port Hueneme is looking at 4 or 5 vacant properties, something like this is incredibly robust. And it might not be the best option we have, especially while we have traditional code enforcement methods available to us, as well as outreach with a number of community organizations that might be interested in helping a business owner develop that property, or presenting that business owner with a different business opportunity that might make sale of that property more valuable to him or her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
Go, I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Oh, are you finished? Okay, yeah. This may go into council comments for future agenda, but I think the impression when I talk to the residents is, real simple. This place has been closed for a long time. What are we going to do about getting it open and vibrant? And this vacant property has been vacant for many, many years. What are we doing about it? And it appears by these punitive measures that the West Hollywood and Oakland take, that may not be the route to take. We're looking more proactive on what we can do to get people moving so that those properties benefit our community. And so I guess I'll save that for future requests on coming up with some kind of a direction or a plan. But any other comments by our council? Okay, well, then we're going to move on to our annual crime update, and that's Chief of Police Salinas. Please begin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Let me see if I can get this up and running here. Oops.
Looks like presentations don't want to work tonight.
Yeah, so is the presentation up on the screen right now?
Saw it for a second.
And then
Okay,
it's gone.
got it. Okay, is it up on the screen now?
Yeah, we see the cover page.
All right, great. Okay, everyone, welcome this evening. I am here to present our annual crime statistics report for 2021. And I apologize, I should actually begin by saying good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff, and those residents joining us today on Zoom. I am presenting our crime statistics for 2021. And as most of you have already seen in a most recent press release, I have nothing but good news to share with everyone this evening. The presentation will not only be about crime statistics, but a summary of our activity and accomplishments for 2021. At the end of the presentation, I also look forward to presenting to you our goals for 2022. So with that, let's get started. When I present our annual crime report, I always start with this slide. It helps establish to our community and to our officers what our vision, mission statement, and our priorities are within our organization. This is our focus year after year and has proved positive, as you will shortly see. Our mission statement, as you see on the bottom there, is serving our community with pride and professionalism. And it helps explain what is important to our organization and is almost a summary of our culture, our value, and our ethics. It helps provide purpose to all of our employees and lets our community know what we value. So most of our priorities are self-explanatory. For the sake of time, I won't dive into each one, but by the end of the presentation, it will all make sense. So let's move on to this next slide. I'm going to get right into our crime statistics for 2021. And here it is broken down by month. It's also broken down by crime type, which is violent crime, which is the gray highlight column you see on the left, and property crime, which is right there in the middle. And then the right column, which is a total crime for each month. As you can see by this slide, actually, let me let you know how all of these categories are actually broken down first, and how we categorize them. And that's through our Uniform Crime Reporting Program, also known as UCR. That's what UCR stands for, Uniform Crime Reporting Program. And we report these statistics to the FBI every year, and they are subsequently used for evaluating the overall crime in a city as compared to other cities. These statistics are commonly used by the public to determine potential locations to start a family, let's say, or for other studies such as best places to retire. And if I'm not mistaken, recently we made the list of one of the best places to retire in a study. So I digress. So within the violent crime category you see here, we have homicide, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery. And within aggravated assault category, you have crimes such as mayhem, assault with a deadly weapon, brandishing of a firearm, and domestic violence strangulation. And then within the property crime category, you have larceny, arson, burglary, and motor vehicle theft. Now, the biggest difference between burglary and larceny is that burglary typically has some form of forced entry. So for example, if your vehicle is left unlocked, it's larceny. As whereby if you lock your vehicle and someone breaks the window to gain entry into that, it's burglary. An unlocked vehicle results in a misdemeanor arrest, while a locked vehicle results in a felony arrest. So I'll break that down even further in a later slide. But that's why we always encourage people to please lock their vehicles. So if you look at the bottom right of this chart, you'll see the number 408. That's the total UCR crime for the city in 2021. You'll see why this is such an important figure in our next slides. So as you see, the months with our lowest crime rates are February, May, and November. And the months with the most crime are July, August, and December. Now, these months are commensurate with the same time period as when our youth are not in school, as well as the holidays when people travel and people are not at home. So as I pull up the next slide, you'll also see the first part of the great news is that we've had an 11.1% crime decrease as compared to last year. We decreased in 6 of the 8 categories for 2021. Unfortunately, we were hit with 2 homicides, of which one has already resulted in an arrest. This was the incident whereby an individual plowed down a group of 7 bicyclists, which resulted in the death of 16-year-old Pedro Valdez. The second homicide occurred on Evergreen, is still under investigation, and has not resulted in an arrest yet. Of the 4 homicides that have occurred during my tenure, all but one has resulted in an arrest thus far. So if we compare the last 4 years with each other, crime has been on a downward trend and has decreased every year. As you see on the bottom left-hand part, from 2000 to 2019, there was a 6.3% decrease. From 2019 to 2020, a 0.6% decrease. In 2020 to 2021, an 11.1% decrease. And over those last 4 years, from 2018 to 2021, we've experienced a 17.3% decrease, which brings me to the second part of our great news. And this is the new low crime record, which has now been set in Port Hueneme as the lowest crime in our history, and especially during this century. So many people are asking, well, how is that possible? Well, I attribute this obviously to the hard work of the men and women of the Port Hueneme Police Department, and because our community, quite frankly, cares. Other factors include the passage of Measure U, which created additional funding for public safety and reinvestment in public safety technology, such as license plate readers, and our reinvestment in public safety technology, again, license plate readers and software, the addition of community service officers, our partnerships with other departments such as Public Works and Facilities, which have been extremely valuable, and our partnerships with the Navy and the Port of Hueneme, and most importantly, our continued commitment to being engaged in our community. So as we look at the table on the screen, the city of Port Hueneme saw an overall crime reduction of 11%, or 51 fewer crimes as compared to last year. The city saw an increase of nearly 9% in violent crime and a decrease in property crime of approximately 14%. The violent crime increase was attributed to a notable increase in aggravated assaults, which I'd explained earlier includes assault with deadly weapons, brandishing of weapons, and serious domestic assaults. Though, of the 44 reported aggravated assaults, 25 of them resulted in arrest, which is a 56% total arrest rate. A couple of the aggravated assaults, which were noteworthy and made the news, included the bicyclists that were plowed down. The other 6 bicyclists each one was counted as a count versus this. So it accounted for 6 additional counts of aggravated assault, as well as the unfortunate hatchet attack that we had over at Anacapa View Beach Homes, where 3 people were violently assaulted. So as we look back at this chart here, robberies continued to decline by nearly 39% between 2018 and 2021. And property crime has decreased by nearly 14%, which is a total of 56 fewer crimes than the year before. Reductions, as you can see, were in all 4 categories. Of note, though, the motor vehicle auto theft category saw a decrease of 19%. Something that I like to brag about is while the Port Hueneme Police Department reported 40 stolen vehicles in our city, officers recovered 49 stolen vehicles during that same time. Of the 49 stolen vehicles recovered, 32 of the vehicles were occupied and resulted in arrest by our agency. This is the 2nd straight year in the city's history that more vehicles have been recovered than were actually reported stolen in our city. A majority of these vehicles that were recovered come from other cities, such as the city of Oxnard. So I've broken down our property crime larceny category, which continues to be the driving force behind our crime rate. Things that we attribute to that is the decriminalization of theft for repeat offenses. While organized retail theft has been on the increase, we haven't quite seen that here in our city, but repetitive shoplifting still continues to be a problem, as well as bail reform, which has made it difficult to keep criminals from subsequent offenses in this category. What I mean by that is when you used to shoplift, and if you were giving jail time, it would be classified as a misdemeanor. If you were to do it a second time, it would be treated as a felony. That has now gone away over the past several years, and our criminals know this. So committing shoplift or any larceny for that matter has been very easy for them because the penalty is often very small. So let's take a look at this next slide here. So here we have our property crime breakdown, and you'll see our larceny category in the chart on the right broken down. And these are the categories which drive our larceny, such as shoplifting and theft from vehicles. And the message that we have consistently sent out is that please lock your vehicle. I mean, if everyone locked their vehicle and we didn't have any thefts from vehicle, we would see an immediate 18% decrease in our crime. So here's a historical slide of our UCR Part 1 crimes for this century. And as you can see, there's been some up and downs, but if you look to the far right for 2021, this is the fewest amount of crimes that have been recorded in any one single year. And some people will ask, well, your chart only goes back to 2000, 2001. Well, that's correct, but I assure you that crime was much higher in the 80s and 90s when bars and brothels were a staple in this town. So crime has continued to go down over the many, many years. On this next slide, you'll see the real number. And again, this is the lowest crime rate per 1,000 residents ever. It actually dropped 2 crimes per 1,000 people. And so according to the California Department of Finance, the 2021 population for the city of Port Hueneme was 23,374. So this tabulates to the overall crime rate per 1,000 to be a historic low of 17.46. So this is how it breaks down by violent crime and property crime. And again, you see 65% of our crime is actually larceny. And then this takes into account the last 4 years, 2018, 19, 20, and 21. And again, larceny continues to be the driving force, where our violent crime is a very small part of that and accounts for only 8% of our total crime. When that number is less than 10%, we are doing very, very good. Okay, so now I know, before I actually get to this slide, I know that some of you are thinking this is all fine and great to have the lowest crime statistics. And I get it, while crime is at an all-time low, quality of life issues continue to be on the rise. as half of our calls for service involve criminal vagrancy. Our residents are also concerned about the increased traffic in our city, as well as the increased graffiti around parks and beaches. We will focus our efforts not only on keeping crime low, but also meeting the needs of our community. So we are very well aware of that. We are making some changes here, such as adding additional CSOs. And as most of you know, in the council approved a new HLO officer this past summer, who started his job in the month of October. So we're starting to see the results of that into this year. So let's talk a little bit about our licensed and highly regulated cannabis businesses, which have truly set the mark for others across the state. On a near weekly basis, I'm being asked to present or talk about cannabis in Port Hueneme, with a request even coming in today from the city of Hermosa Beach. People want to know how we are recording record crime rates in the city, which we are the self-titled cannabis capital of the world, with more dispensaries by capita than anywhere else. So with cannabis taking effect in Port Hueneme in 2017, many believed it would be the contributing factor and a source for criminal activity. Well, obviously this remains one of the biggest myths about cannabis today. These licensed and legal dispensaries continue to deter and reduce crime in the shopping centers in which they are present. Our criminal vagrancy calls for service come from shopping centers without dispensaries, such as Mandalay, Olivera, and the 99-cent store. Why, you ask? Because they have armed security, they have an incredible video surveillance system, and they maintain their business surroundings. With over 75,000 customers visiting Port Hueneme dispensaries every month, the areas around these dispensaries have remained safe and clean. And so I wanted to show you this graph here, which shows the Green Mile and all of the dispensaries which are currently open. We have 9 approved dispensaries that are open for business. You'll see one that's not in this map, which is not included along the Green Mile, and that's Emerald Perspective. The green dots are reflective of the dispensaries that are going to be opening soon, which have been approved, which include the Outlet, Fire Garden, and PH Green. So let's talk about community engagement. Actually, before I do that, one thing I want to point out that's also a myth, and I commonly get asked is, especially with the approval of a new city ordinance surrounding consumption lounges, is that a lot of the naysayers thought that the city would be inundated with stoners and potheads driving in our streets and crowding our beaches and parks. And again, this couldn't be further from the truth. In 2021, we had more drunk drivers that were arrested than cannabis by a ratio of 50 to 1. Notably, we made 51 DUI arrests in 2021, and we only made 1 driving under the influence of cannabis arrest. And keep in mind that we have the top expert in cannabis that teaches all the officers and all the district attorneys in the entire county on how to be on the lookout for driving under the influence of cannabis. So rest assured, our officers are trained and they know what to look for. And a lot of that has to do with Sergeant Ryan Bates, who provides this training to all of our officers. So in addition to these statistics, we had 23 DUI traffic-related alcohol collisions in the city of Port Hueneme, as compared to none involving cannabis. So that's a key statistic that I wanted to point out to everyone. So as I close in regards to our statistics here in Port Hueneme, I have to recognize the men and women of our department, especially as they were driven and the demand given by the pandemic that we experienced in 2021. And our crime statistics were not swayed by this illness, and we were able to maintain a strong level of service during this difficult time, especially when our public needed us most. And so the Port Hueneme Police Department has been committed to recognizing deficiencies, adapting changes in policing, engaging the community, and building relationships. We can't do this without our community. This is why our crime rate continues to decrease. It is absolutely critical to evolve and to adapt to crime trends and the needs of the community. We just can't rely on data, but rather positive outcomes. So our strategy is paying dividends. So enough about the stats. Let's talk about our community engagement here. And so these are just a few of the events that we hosted or coordinated. Of note, not many people know that we also maintain the city's cannabis website, which allows people to find safe and licensed cannabis locations in our city. So here you have the events that we worked on during 2021, breast cancer awareness, Coffee with a Cop, NAMI, the Hueneme Beach Car Show, our catalytic converter event. Here's the website that I talked about, porthuenemecannabis.org, and of course, Cops for Tots, and Autism Month, which is hidden by this slide right here. So here's some other photos of us out in the community that I wanted to share as well, that we posted on social media. And so then let's talk about some of our community partnerships. So some of you are part of this picture here, our community backpack program, which we started in February of last year, thanks to our sponsors such as Skunk Masters, HPC, and SafePort. Our partnership with our schools, these signs were made by our local elementary school and delivered here to the police department. Our partnerships with NAMI, with National Awareness on the mentally ill, as well as some of our holiday programs where one of our officers was out at the Boys and Girls Club delivering gifts to our youth there. We talked about NAMI, the law enforcement torch run here that we all participated in, including our city manager this past year for Special Olympics. And of course, our Cops for Tots toy buying event, where we spent over $25,000 supplying our toys for the event, which was designed to help the needy children of not only Port Hueneme, but of South Oxnard. Here we have Habitat for Humanity, myself, as well as several officers, and I know council people participated in this event early on. There's a picture of our catalytic converter event, where we etched upwards of a couple dozen vehicles. Here we have probably one of the largest turnouts for our tree lighting ceremony. And then most recently, our Read Across America program, where our officers participated in this program, as well as participating in the fundraiser for Channel Islands High School, where many of our Port Hueneme residents attend, as they were attempting to rehabilitate both the baseball and softball fields. And here's another picture of us packing the homeless backpacks this past February. And so I wanted to actually now show you guys one of our new programs that we are going to launch this year. And let's see if this starts. So thank you to Scott for putting that video together for us, but that is going to be one of our new programs as soon as the COVID restrictions ease. We plan on make it a part of our regular schedule to visit our local elementary schools during their recess period, so we can develop positive and trusting relationships with our youth. So let's talk about social media. We take advantage of our social media, whether it be to recruit people, to showcase what our officers do in the community. We use it to report crime and educate our public on scams, such as jury duty scams that became prevalent in 2021. We use it to let them know of significant arrests. The one you see on your left, we actually located 2 stolen vehicles in our city within 1 hour, resulting in arrests in both instances. We recently made an arrest on December 15th regarding the shooting that occurred in the 600 block of West Hemlock Street. And then most recently, we reported in December, a 2-year-old incident where the 6-year-old girl was shot on a drive-by in the 100 block of East Pearl Street. That was a big, very newsworthy event. We made our final arrest in that incident in December, and a total of 4 people were arrested as a result of that incident. So we didn't just go after one person, we went after all of them. We use it to help identify criminals. Here are 2 instances where we actually got the public involved and they were able to help us identify a porch pirate and a gentleman here that was going and running around our city tagging multiple locations. We use it to announce events. We use it to showcase our officers and our employees. And here, this posting here on the right was the most liked and shared posting of 2021. It's a very powerful image and it says a lot. And it truly is reflective of a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this one saw over 80,000 hits in a city and population of 23,000 people. So it was 3 times the size of our city. And something to be proud of is that we actually have more people following us than we have households in the city of Port Hueneme. So our social media is doing very, very well. Something I want to point out too that occurred in 2021 was our employee recognition event. I know all of you attended here and I obviously thank you all for your support. All of our officers reaffirmed their oath of office in 2021, which was officiated by Ventura County Superior Court Judge Gilbert Romero. The event was well attended and gave us opportunity to recognize some of the great work and achievements from the past year, especially with the cancellation of so many events. We also got a chance to recognize our employees for their many, many years of service. So let's talk about our accomplishments for 2021. We are celebrating our lowest crime rate in the city's history. The department has been regulating, along with community development, 7 of our retail cannabis dispensaries. I say 7 because 2 of them just recently came online to make 9. Everyone attended our Cops for Tots event, which served 1,100 children. We started the Turkey Drive giveaway this year. Our Port Hueneme Police Explorer car show. Our Explorer program expanded to over 30 youth. We started our homeless backpack program. We added an HLO officer. We finally have tow contracting services with 2 tow companies, which are Platinum Towing and Payless Towing. We had a CAD upgrade. CAD stands for Computer Aided Dispatch. We are now in compliance and have been with AB 953 RIPA, which stands for the Racial and Identity Profiling Act, which was enacted in 2016. This requires us to report stop data, and stop data means that anytime we stop an individual, we are required to report certain items such as an individual's perceived race and the reason for the stop. We upgraded our 911 system. Text to 911 went live. You saw pictures from our catalytic converter etching event. We deployed to Northern California to assist with the Calder fire. That's the picture you see here off to the right. And then we just recently spoke about our employee recognition ceremony and our reaffirmation of oaths. So our goals for 2022, we still like to start a police chief foundation, which would be a nonprofit foundation so that we could accept private dollars. We want to renovate our police communication center and our police facilities, which are becoming very aged. The building is more than or near 40 years old. And so we have a lot of remodeling and refurbishing to do. We would like to add 2 community service officers as well as a sworn officer. The purpose of the sworn officer is to handle traffic enforcement duties or to be a motor officer. We need to update our emergency response guide. We created a booklet back in 2018. We will be updating that booklet for 2022. We are going to completely overhaul our radio infrastructure and are currently working with the county to be integrated into a county-wide system. We are looking to upgrade our records management system as well as the computers inside our police units. We are looking to go to electronic citations, which means the officer, all they would do is swipe a person's driver's license, push a few buttons, and their citation would be printed out, very similar to what parking enforcement does at this time. And we would add our GIS software to our current systems, as that's something that we currently don't have, which will ultimately assist us with our response times. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, Councilperson Perez.
Laura may have been ahead of me.
Okay, Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Perez. I think I was probably ahead of you by just a half a second. Chief, thank you so much for your presentation and all the work that the men and women of your department are performing. This is just wonderful news to see that we're bringing down the crime rate in Port Hueneme. I hope that we can maintain that. I'm just overwhelmed with all the wonderful things that your department is working on, and especially the bringing down of that crime rate. That's phenomenal. One of the things I wanted to ask is, being that the crime rate is down, and you identified the fact that if only people lock their car doors, that we would see a lower rate. Are you planning to do any kind of messaging or public campaign to encourage people to really take that seriously and not leave their cars unlocked?
Yeah, so we actually have a pamphlet, and this is something that we posted on social media probably a couple of years ago, but we continue to see this as being a problem, especially in gated communities where people feel the safest. But the criminals know that, and so they know all they have to do is jump a fence, and they'll get a host of unlocked vehicles within that gated community. So it's really sharing that information at all of our neighborhood meetings that kind of went dry for 2021. And now that we're kind of getting out of these COVID restrictions, we'll now have a better opportunity to address these issues with our neighborhoods. In fact, we attended one for the first time in almost a couple of years at Via Civil, most recently, to talk about the intersection of Channel Islands and Boulker and crime in their neighborhood. So as the restrictions start to lift, we will have that opportunity to really sell that message. And then we're also going to start one other program, which we are going to kind of create these coupons or tickets. And our officers at night are going to go around and check car doors themselves. And if they find a car unlocked, the individual owner is going to get a nice little card inside of their vehicle, letting them know that they left their vehicle unlocked, and with a nice little message from the Port Hueneme Police Department.
I like it. I like it. I love the program proposal that you put forth in Recess with the kids. I think it's so important to give our children an opportunity to have a positive experience with law enforcement. And I think you're really going to make a difference there. So great thinking on that one. I do have a question about the Police Chief Foundation. What's the mission going to be of the foundation, and who are the beneficiaries of the fundraising that you'll be doing?
So the police department will be the beneficiary, and we'll use it to purchase equipment for officers, safety equipment, canines. In a most recent occasion, we applied for a grant, but we had to use REACH as the nonprofit. And that's where that money currently sits for us to purchase a canine. And so this will allow us to accept that money directly to the police department through this foundation, which will be, which will have a board of not only people from the police department, but people from the community to participate and help us kind of find our direction and what our mission is and what our objectives and goals are at. But the primary goal is the ability to accept private money here at the police department, which we currently can't do unless we have people write a check to our police explorers, and we want to get out of that business.
Right, right. Well, good luck with that. There's a lot of things that you can do as a nonprofit and a foundation. So I look forward to seeing the fruition of that. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Councilperson Perez.
Thank you, Chief. And it's great to see all the positive things that we have to hear about our police department when we're so used to in this past year hearing so much negativity about law enforcement. It's great to see that our community still has a positive attitude towards them as well. I have a couple of questions. I'll keep them quick. Now, one of the theft issues I notice is in some of our grocery stores and CVS and Rite Aid, there's a lot of shoplifting, and they don't really, I guess it's policy of the corporation not to do anything to stop that. What can we do, or is there anything that we can do to reach out to those organizations, try to help them get on board with trying to put an end or lower that? Is the first question.
Yeah, so we have been in contact with many of these crime prevention units or officers at each one of these locations, primarily Rite Aid, the 99-cent store, Ralph's, the Marine West store used to be a key location, but not anymore. Goodwill continues to be a concern. And so an example would be we had issues at Goodwill, and about 2 months ago, we actually met with their entire staff, including their corporate people in their back room. And we went over some of the CPTED issues, that's crime prevention through environmental design, some of the things that they could do as a organization to help prevent theft and report it as well. So it's us working together with these businesses to help deter and help prevent crime. We've actually thought about just parking a police unit right in front of Rite Aid or Ralph's, something like we commonly do when we want to slow speeders. We park it in front of City Hall or park them in front of elementary schools. So that's something for us to try as well. But because theft has been decriminalized, a lot of these stores have decided to take a hands-off approach. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos from San Francisco of people just walking in with bags, empty bags, and leaving with full bags, and no one can do anything about it because they have a hands-off policy. So luckily, we haven't seen too much of that here, but it's us working with each one of these stores, which will help make that difference.
And my next comment is about the explorers. I know, and as everyone here knows, how important they are to our city and to youth. Is there any thoughts on having a fair where explorers can engage in the youth of the community and try to get more involvement with the youth and interest in becoming an explorer?
Yes, so we have the Youth Involvement Fair, which I believe kind of took a hiatus because of COVID. So there's no doubt that that'll be brought back and hopefully sponsored by Reach. And as you know, our explorers commonly set up booths at banana festivals, Hueneme Beach festivals, and events across the city of Port Hueneme, as well as at the local high schools. So we use those types of activities to try and garner as much interest in our program as possible.
Also, National Night Out, are we going to bring that back?
Yes.
Perfect.
Should be the first Tuesday in the month of August.
My last question is, what can we do? Where do we need to improve in the police department? What can we do to engage better? What other things that we can offer the community? Is there anything that we're missing that we need to focus on as a council?
Actually, the council has been very supportive of many of my requests and are starting to see the effects or the results of those requests. One request that'll be coming up soon is the addition of CSO officers. They have become very valued around here because they are able to complete cold reports, traffic collision reports, and most importantly, transport prisoners to the county jail, which really frees up a lot of officer time. And so we have 2 right now that have been allocated. we're looking to add 2 more for a total of 4, and 4 will allow us to cover both ends of the week on both shifts. And so that will free up officer time to do more foot patrols, let's say in the parks and beaches, and allow them to do more visible work. And when we talk about those quality of life issues and impacting those quality of life issues, that's where that's going to pay dividends.
Great. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you very much for the thorough report. It's pretty awesome to see the results of great community policing being out in front. Hopefully I'll get to do my inspiration. And one of the things that I know, and I'm pretty sure you know, is that the dividends, the big dividends, are going to be down the road a little bit. And for example, I've had students that have been coming to beach cleanup now for 5 years, and I see them developing into a young adult, and I see the memory of toy cops for tots and the Christmas things and all the things that we do. And we have so many youth organizations in our community really pouring on the services now. And for me, like, when these kids become adults, they won't be doing crime. And I think that's where, we're really going to see some real positive results down the road here because of all the things that you brought to the table, other nonprofits and youth organizations are bringing to the table. And it's amazing to look across the board and look at all the engagement, family engagement, youth engagement, all those things that are happening in our community. I think it's going to make a huge difference. So I just want to thank you so much for everything that you've done. These new initiatives are great. I really, I met a student that was with the Real Guppy program, and she talked about recess with the cops. And so, these things are lasting impressions on these young kids. And it's that the time that we're spending across the board, it's going to pay big dividends. So thank you to the entire police department. Thank you for, and the biggest highlight of 2021 was the reaffirming the oath of office. And I think that that really showed our public who we are and who you are and who your department is. So thank you so much. Appreciate everything you're doing and look forward to a better community.
Thank you.
Councilperson Hernandez, your hand's up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Chief, I just wanted to follow up on with regards to the homeless program. I wanted to thank you and Officer Montalongo for that presentation that you delivered following the report that City Council Member Martinez and I presented. But there is one issue that I think we haven't addressed yet, and that's signing on to the Continuum of Care program with the county. And I'm not so sure if that's going to be done through Officer Montalongo or some other individual who will be asked to represent the city. But I just wanted to ask if you're anticipating following up on that or where that's going to land.
Absolutely. I know they're experiencing a change of leadership there, but Officer Montalongo will absolutely be our representative for the city of Port Hueneme. That's one of his assigned duties. And I think we're all excited about having him on. In fact, the plan is to have him report quarterly to City Council, especially since we just had the point in time count. And so I expect to have him reporting to City Council during the month of April, not only to provide a homeless update, but to actually provide an update in terms of the point in time count that we had in February.
Okay, great. I have paperwork. I'll forward it to you. I think it'll help us do our part in making sure we get signed on to that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a few little points. I'm not going to go over what everybody else, the accolades that we all feel, but I'll have a few little points. 14 years ago, I moved to Port Hueneme, and I've lived in many cities in many states, and I have never felt as safe as when I've lived in Port Hueneme. I also have worked in a number of cities, and the the police officers from the chief down to the community service officers always display the ultimate of professionalism. A few months ago, I went on a ride along, and I was just impressed by the relationships that our police department have made with the local citizenry, the businesses, even the people of interest, and how they dealt with them. I thought was quite good. I'm looking forward. I remember when I was involved in Reach years ago when we first did the Youth Involvement Fair, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'm one of the, I guess I'm not, but my son is one of those people who left their car unlocked and had to do a police report, and he learned from that, you know. I think he felt too safe in our community. So to tell everybody that's a good thing to follow, to lock your car. My only, what do you feel your challenges are as you move forward? I mean, it's obviously an exemplary report, and we're doing many things right. If you had one thing that you wanted to improve or get into in the future, what might it be?
Addressing our criminal vagrancy issue that we have that accounts for nearly 60% of our calls for service every single day.
Okay.
So I think if we can start chipping away at that and making some sort of impact, and I think our HLO will help address that not only short term, but in long term. And when he reports in April, you'll see some of the case studies and some of the people that he's been able to already turn around and get involved into some programs to help them long term, and thus kind of reduce the number of homelessness or transients or criminal vagrants that we actually have here in the city of Port Hueneme.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. I wanted to say thank you to Chief Salinas and to your police department. I'm really proud of you guys for your amazing work, and most importantly for our historic lows in crime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that great report, we will move on to our
Mayor?
next. Yes.
If it's the council's pleasure, we could attempt to do Councilmember Gama's inspiration one more time with the assistance of our IT manager.
Okay, let's go for it.
All right, Aaron, see if you can pull it up.
Okay, Aaron, I will, how about if I snap a finger I want to move through this real quickly. So inspiration, the youth of our community, that's the focus of my inspiration for tonight. Next, how about a snap finger for the next slide?
This one's just.
Well, you went too, there you go. Second slide. Leadership is not a position or a title, it's action and example. And in the win this week, we had kids show up from Simi Valley with this t-shirt on, and you could see they give me their community service to sign off on. And so really appreciate the fact that people from Simi Valley are coming to help clean up Hueneme Beach. Next slide. Boys and Girls Club of Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme. It's another great youth organization, interacting with youth. The youth get inspired, and they do great things. Next slide. Youth Coalition of Oxnard, they were participating this weekend in the win, helping clean up the beach. They come out quite a bit throughout the year. Next slide. Future Leaders of America were out on Hueneme Beach with us this weekend, providing leadership and getting those good habits in place with our younger persons of our community. Next. Mayor Rollins and I, oh, if you go back. Mayor Rollins and I attended a Future Leader of America little meeting in Oxnard, and we felt great interaction with people that are interested in making, youth who are interested in making a difference in our community. Next. We do a lot of interaction with the Hueneme High School Junior ROTC program. They come out and participate quite often. Next. All the kids in yellow shirts are from the Port Hueneme or the Hueneme High School Junior ROTC program. Next slide. Sea Cadets, we love the Sea Cadets. They come out regularly. They do a lot for our community when we get back to normal. When they come out to beach cleanup, they do a full dress workout, and they not only clean the beach, but they also do a lot of other activities that are part of their program. Next. And we do push-ups at the library. We're over there moving books one time, and we all decided to do push-ups and stay in shape. We love the Sea Cadets. Next. EO Green Middle School students come out periodically and provide their services to us. And again, nothing but positive interaction, wellness on the beach when it's not windy. Next. Port Hueneme Police Explorers have come out several times. We love to interact with them, and they always are learning and doing great things for our community. Next slide. Adolfo Camarillo Wrestling has been out a couple times. Next. Hueneme High School Interact Club, they are taking over the responsibility of keeping Bubbling Springs clean. Next. Oxnard Calvary Chapel has come out several times to do cleanup in and around our community during the Oxnard Cleanup Week, I think it's called. Next. Coastal Keepers came onto the scene last year. I've actually met them on the beach, and they do a lot of wonderful things with children. And again, they're concerned about the environment, working really hard. Next. California Coastal Cleanup 2019. I think we had nearly, I don't know, it was several hundred, but you can see by this photograph, we had so many people out contributing and helping. And again, there's Chief Hayes from Hueneme High School Junior ROTC. Next. Camarillo Girl Scout troops, a number of their troops come out every now and then. This was, I think, 2 troops together. They're powered by Girl Scouts, and we really appreciate the fact that they come out. Next. And this is another troop come out in the rain to pick up trash at Hueneme Beach from Camarillo. Next. United Soccer of Oxnard, they've come out several times. I've went out and helped them in the city of Oxnard. They paid it forward by coming out to Hueneme Beach and having a great time. Next. Real Guppies, we all know about Real Guppies. They spend a lot of time fishing with kids on the pier, and they also have their participants participate in Hueneme Beach cleanup. Next. Just a little more about Real Guppies. They're reaching out and into classrooms now, which is a really positive aspect. And in their programming, they teach environmental stewardship, which we really appreciate here in the city of Port Hueneme. Next. And Mesa Verde Middle School from Moore Park. They came out and participated in Real Guppies and also a little beach cleanup. Next. And of course, our Port Hueneme Junior Lifeguard program is an excellent program, giving youth the tools and the experience of becoming or interested in becoming a junior lifeguard program or junior lifeguard. And it's been here with us for 30 years, I believe. Next slide. Hueneme School Athletics, can't say enough. We all know how important athletics is, and Hueneme High School is on a positive trajectory to reestablish themselves as a powerhouse in athletics, and we really appreciate that. Next. Here's a Hueneme football team dinner that we helped with earlier in the year. Next. Port Hueneme Little League, as you know, they just had the grand opening day the other day, but it's another aspect of positive youth engagement in our community. And the next slide. Valencia dance team, they came all the way from Valencia to participate in a dance competition. I got to meet them, and they love the city of Port Hueneme. Next. Westlake, Villanova, and homeschoolers. So we get kids from all over the place participating throughout the year, and we really appreciate the effort that these kids put forward. Next. Family engagement, we get families that come out and work together as a team, and it's always good to see their smiles, and they always have a good time. Next. This is a family. This is my neighbor. This is his entire family. His grandchildren all come out. Again, we're just offering a really good time for family engagement, positive experience here in our lovely city. Next. And of course, Cops for Tots. It's always a great time when we all get together and we get to interact with literally thousands of kids. It's one of the highlights of the year, and I know we all enjoy it, and we appreciate our police department for putting this together and giving us that opportunity. Next. Adolfo Camarillo High School Green Club comes out a couple times a year. They're really enthusiastic, love to get involved, and we appreciate them coming out to our beach. Next. So community engagement and involvement, that's what we're looking for. And there's a lot of it going on in the city of Port Hueneme, and it's an inspiration for me to be able to share this with you and show some of, not all of, but there's a lot other positive youth activities going on in our city. And we are ecstatic and excited to get back to the Youth Involvement Fair. And the Youth Involvement Fair is a fair, it's kind of like a job fair, but it's a youth involvement fair. So where we could get kids exposed to all these different youth activities that they may be interested in. And that concludes my inspiration for the night. Thank you.
That's quite an inspiration, Councilman Gama. I think all of our council is very much committed towards giving opportunities for our youth to be involved, to become better citizens of the future. Okay, let us move on to the Arbor Day proclamation. Being presented by Mr. Cable.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, residents, and staff. Today, I will be presenting the proclamation honoring Arbor Day this year, this second Thursday in March. Honoring Arbor Day in the city of Port Hueneme. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce wind and water erosion in our precious topsoil, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that the City Council of Port Hueneme hereby proclaim the second Thursday in March as Arbor Day in the city of Port Hueneme, and all citizens are urged to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. We urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Thank you. This Thursday, we will be planting 3 drought-tolerant California sycamores along the rec corridor in front of the Public Works building, on the rec corridor, adjacent to the Public Works building. We will be doing that on Thursday at 11:30 a.m. And we invite all residents, council members to be present. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. And I want to commend our staff. Recently, they've been quite vigilant. There's been a number of trees that have been, that are getting old, that were about to crack. And our limited staff was able to get out there quickly and prevent a potential injury. So thank you, Public Works. I'm also looking forward to us hiring our landscape manager arborist so that we can be even more good servants to get our trees in great shape, because I think trees do wonders for improving in values, improving the quality of life, and then also improving the environment that we live in. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Really love the effort that we're putting forward with our trees. We are a Tree City USA, and we know that we need to care for our trees, just like we care for humans. And we know that we have to, at times, remove the sickly ones and replace them with beautiful drought-tolerant native California trees. And I hope that's a direction that we continue to go with. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cable, for your presentation and recognizing the trees that we have here in Port Hueneme are just amazing. I live in Las Palomas, and we've got a beautiful tree-lined landscape here. And I just want to appreciate all the work that you have done. I know it's difficult to maintain city-owned trees in the city with all the wind and the elements now have just changed dramatically, and the drought conditions as well. So kudos to you and staff for all the hard work that you are doing to maintain our beautiful city. Just really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All righty. We will now move on to number 4, and that is our street sweeping and parking presentation by Mr. Camarillo, our Deputy Public Works Director.
Actually, Mayor, this is Tony Stewart. If I may kick this off, it's actually a joint presentation with Mr. Camarillo and myself. And just want to remind everybody that because we've got a lot of information to present to you this evening, we'll break in a couple places, one at the end of the street sweeping presentation, and then the other at the end of the parking presentation to provide time for all of your questions if you have them. As well as to receive any public input at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Camarillo, who will go ahead and discuss our street sweeping program with you all.
Aaron, are you able to pull up this presentation as well, please? I'll try running it. Fred, you can start.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff, and everybody tuning in. I'm going to be covering the street sweeping portion of this presentation. So if we can go to the next slide. Why street sweeping? One of the primary reasons for it, and it has been for a long time, our NPDES stormwater permit has had requirements that was related to street sweeping frequencies, regarding how much we actually would have to sweep certain individual areas. Again, that was for keeping debris and trash out of our waterways. Over the years, we've had, since I've been here, we've had 4 different permits. The most recent current permit that we have now has a system where they require jurisdictions to go ahead and rank streets or street segments based on how much trash is generated in those areas. And they categorize it as a category A, which is your highest generating trash areas, a category B, which is a moderate trash generation, and then a category C, which is low. It's kind of tied into the last permit where they had a category similar rankings of A, B, and C. but it was tied to the amount of trash and debris that was getting into the catch basins themselves. So they've changed a little bit in the way that they've required how we sweep. But we also have the ability to adjust those as we see. Now, with data that we used in the prior permit where we had to categorize each catch basin, I didn't see any areas as far as street segments that we would be in the lowest of C, where that's basically you do it once per year. Category A's where you have the highest trash generating, it's required that we at least do it twice per month. And then category B's of moderate trash generations, we have to do it at least one time per month. Now, we currently have our medians throughout the city that are done one time per month. We have our arterial streets, our curbs that we do every Monday. And then we have a couple of areas, Wainini Bay and Marina Village, where we do alternates. So they're not doing it every week. It's 2 times per month. But I think that the way it's currently constructed is that our routes are indicative of what the permit is looking at. And again, I don't think we have any area C's that we would identify based on what we have here. Again, it's not just trash that they're looking for. They specifically put it in the permit that it's trash/debris, which encompasses everything, including even leaf litter and all of that. So as you know, we do have trees everywhere throughout our city. And we do have to contend with a lot of leaf litter always, and even more so when we get the wind events. Secondary reason is obviously we just want to keep things clean. We have it set up so that we don't end up with a big buildup of this debris trash that we end up having a public nuisance, if you will. Street sweeping is handled through the Public Works Department. We do the contract, we evaluate the different areas. This past cycle, we looked at and had been doing, we had not been doing some of the parking lots, and we've added all of those back in, all of our public parking areas at the parks, the library. We've added all those back in. All of these things are areas that we can look at, but again, we hadn't done them for several years. We got them back in this time, and it was a lot of it came from knowing that we had areas that were lacking in attention. If we can go to the next slide. And again, the routes that we have currently have been here. I've been with the city going on 26 years. These routes were established when I got here. It previously fell under a different department, but over the years it's changed, and Public Works has taken it on. And we have looked at different things. And again, like I said, we had canceled some of the parking lot stuff before based on a few things. One of them was when the city was going through some of its leaner times, those were areas that we could easily take off that wouldn't have a huge impact, but it did affect the overall cost of the contract. So we do take a look at things like that. There are certain requirements that we have to meet, again, based off of our permit. Some of the other things was, as far as route, was schedule changes. If we wanted to look at doing something like that, we'd have to make sure before we did anything, we'd want to make sure that we got plenty of public outreach out there to let people know what was coming. Again, if we make wholesale changes to anything without giving enough time for people to let that soak in, people are creatures of habit. They expect certain things at certain times. We get a lot of people that they time things out. They realize when things are going to be happening. And if they don't happen right when they're expecting them within a certain window, they oftentimes call in and want to know what's going on. So we'd want to make sure we really have a lot of public outreach and get people prepared for any changes that we might contemplate doing. The other big thing would be our signs, all of our posted signs that indicate what time, what days, where they wouldn't be able to park during the street sweeping. Depending on what we did, if we wanted to do some sort of change, any change at this point would be a minimum of probably replacing at least half of all of our signs if we wanted to do something where we did maybe one side of the street 1 week and another side of the street another week. So it would be time intensive. I don't have a physical count of how many no parking signs we have for street sweeping that are out there, but there are a lot. And so it would be a fairly costly replacement as well as time intensive to take everything down and then go ahead and replace and put everything back up again. Currently, we only have the 4 days that you see there on the screen that we don't street sweep. And I know there's been some comments that were made recently regarding potentially doing some things differently, or maybe perhaps the day after Thanksgiving or the day after Christmas, where people typically have family coming in from out of town visiting, and maybe not doing sweeping on those days following a holiday event. That's certainly something we can look at. That would be something that we wouldn't have to change signs for. It would be just something that we could post and get that information out to the public. So it wouldn't be nearly as intensive of having to, as by way of notifying people, because we can go ahead and do that rather simply. Some of the other things that with this new permit that we do have in our stormwater permit, again, we can make some reductions. I mentioned the schedules and how they do the minimum of 2 times per month for our category A, the 1 time per month for category B. So those are things that we can take a look at. Council can certainly decide whether they would like to make some sort of change to how many times we are doing it as per required by our stormwater permit. That would be something that we could go ahead and readjust the current contract that we have that still has a couple of years left on it. Again, not a major change that we would have to do on the contract side, but again, going back to, if we're going to make those changes, it would be something that we really want to do the public outreach for, and then get a sense of how many actual physical signs that would need to be replaced in some fashion. Next slide. We currently, I know recently we've had some calls in. We haven't had a big rainy season this year, so we haven't had a lot of them, but as far as the rain goes, what we've done recently is gone ahead and made the decision that we at Public Works will monitor the weather, and if there's a 50% or chance greater of precipitation based out of the NOAA website, then we will be making that call on the day before in the afternoon in order to be able to coordinate with parking enforcement, the contractor, and getting that information posted so people know. So that's something that we have that it's newer that we want to go ahead and start doing. We haven't had the rain come since we've decided this on a street sweeping day, so we haven't had to do any of those things yet, but that's something that we want to do to try and make things easier for the public to know whether or not there's going to be street sweeping on a particular day. Again, the parking enforcement goes with the street sweeper, and they are the ones that are enforcing and making sure that the sweeper has the street cleared so they can do that. I mean, there are times when there are some vehicles get left out, the street sweeper has to go around it. But again, in order to get the best job done for this, it's obviously best to have every vehicle out of the way during the posted time so the sweeper can go ahead and get everything that's out there. On street sweeping days, we do also allow residents to temporarily park on the lawns so they can get off of the street it gives them an opportunity. If they don't have somewhere else to park, they can go ahead and go there. But then they must remove them from the lawn by the end of the street sweeping day. Next slide. Typically, we don't grant waivers to allow a vehicle to be parked on the street. Again, because it blocks the sweeper and it prevents the best job from being done. But if a vehicle is cited, the registered owner or operator can contest the citation. And as you see, depending on the plate's history, a one-time courtesy may be granted. Next. If you have any questions, I'm free to answer anything you might have.
Okay. I only see at this point, Councilman Gama, you have a question.
Yes, my question is, with regards to leaves, are they supposed to go down the storm drain? Or, because as you know, when the fall comes, there's my street in particular, there's so many leaves that many of them end up in the storm drain.
No, I mean, and again, that's why our permit specifically states that it's trash/debris that they want cleared. If they do get into the storm drains, then we're going to be placing what they call excluders inside of our catch basins. And those are designed to keep any debris over a 5 millimeter size from getting down the drain and moving on forward. So it would all be captured inside each individual basin. Again, they have inspection requirements that are tied to this too, as far as checking each of the catch basins to make sure that they aren't too full. And that's something that becomes with once these trash excluders, and that's just their terminology, but it catches anything that gets into the catch basins. Those will cause the debris to build up in each individual basin rather than getting down and flowing all the way out. A lot of our stuff currently goes, we have a couple of major, we're kind of divided into. We have the Bubbling Springs corridor where almost 50% of our runoff goes to the Bubbling Springs section, which then flows down to the J Street channel. And I'm sure you've all seen it, the big county flood control pump station there, but that also has a trash rack built into that particular station. So anything that gets through there and goes through that will then, they've got a system set up that filters that out and off, and it goes into a separate area so it doesn't just get pumped out into the channel, which then obviously goes and heads out to the ocean. We also have the channel on the West Drain channel that goes on Channel Islands Boulevard. That one, we do have what they call trash booms set up inside the channel so that they're floating and they rise with the water. And any floatables that get in there will eventually get trapped there, and then that debris is removed out. Some years ago, we had an end of the channel device, but during one of the big storms about 5 years ago, it got damaged and ripped off the wall. And so that one has not been replaced yet.
Yeah, the area that I noticed is at the museum. I spent a lot of time there volunteering outside, and the ficus trees, it just seems like that storm drain is just full of leaves all the time. And so I think I heard you say that they get filtered out down at the ladder?
Yes, they will, anything that goes on that side, we have on that area, that's one of the separate areas that we have. And that actually ends up going down and runs into a lift station that we have that actually sits inside the port property. It used to be part of C. That debris gets sucked up and in there, and then it settles out, and then we can clean it from there.
Yeah, I think it might be worth considering. I don't know how the other council members feel, but day after Thanksgiving, day after Christmas might be a reasonable change because of the reasons stated. But I think you all do a really good job. And the leaves are a major area that I know takes a lot of effort, and you have to be compliant with the stormwater runoff. So I get it. And I appreciate the information. Sorry for going long.
Before we go on, is there a way you can remove that questions slide? Because I can't see the rest of our council, or if there's any potential public comment at this point in time. Okay, and I know, please forgive me, council people. At this point, are there any public comments regarding this issue that people would like to speak? Madam Clerk.
I have not received any written requests for comment.
Okay.
We do have a member of the public who has used the raised hand feature, Mayor.
Okay, I see Pam's iPhone. So you have the floor, Pam's iPhone.
Thank you, Pam Torgerson. I just want to say that for neighborhoods, I'm in the Pacific Collection, and then next to us we have a neighborhood which I can't remember the name of, but it's between Hemlock and like Victoria and Hemlock is the corner. But it's a really big multi-family neighborhood, and between the two of our neighborhoods, all of the street sweeping is on the same day. And it just seems like it would be possible, hopefully possible, to like figure out how to do like one side of the street at a time, like on one day on Thursday, one side on Thursday and one side on Fridays or something like that. It just, because it really creates a lot of problems for all the people in these two neighborhoods to have their cars completely gone when there's actually too many cars to even have street parking to begin with. So when they all have to be gone at once for street sweeping, it's really, really hard. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, so now I'm going to move back to Councilman. And at this time, let's see, I think I saw Councilperson Hernandez. I don't see her hand up anymore, so I'm going to move on. Now I see her hand up. So Councilperson Hernandez.
I'm just messing with you, Mary. No, I'm just kidding.
Easy to do.
Thank you, Mr. Camarillo, for your presentation. I was wondering if there was a map of some sort which would show what areas fall in what categories.
Yes, if you go onto the city website under the Public Works Department and go down to street sweeping, and then you'll see it's listed as the 2019 map. It'll say click here, and you can go on there, and it outlines the days and the times that they're done, and it's a whole map, and then you can break it down in section by route.
Okay, because one of the, as you know, I was the city's rep on the Every Bit Counts campaign with the county a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things I encouraged was our youth to focus on our local neighborhoods. I think the beaches are important, but also it starts within our own neighborhoods, the tossing of trash into the gutters that go into the waterways. And so I just thought this map might be helpful in just bringing awareness to those neighborhoods that might need a little extra help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Perez.
Thank you. And yes, I would like to concur with Pam. I also live in the Pacific Collection, and I know that we all have in our cul-de-sacs extra parking spots, but they're always filled up with people trying to find parking places, to the point where I have had to park in the Ralph Shopping Center just to put my vehicle someplace because I had no other place to park. So trying to find a good solution that would help the community members with taking into account the hard parking that we have in our city would be something to definitely think about.
Okay. I have a couple of comments, somewhat reinforcement on some of the other comments. My concern is, and I guess a question would be, why have we chosen to, when we do street sweeping, shut down all of the streets the same period of time? I know that I deliver meals to that area that I guess it would be between Hemlock and the Pacific Collection, actually in that whole area. And I deliver those on Friday, and luckily I have a little poster that says they're not going to give me a ticket when I do that. However, I noticed that all of the streets are where, and a lot of those particular places have maybe one parking spot that they can move into their building. I mean, into their driveway. And if they don't have that, then really they have to park perhaps blocks away. And I guess my question is, has there ever been any consideration towards splitting it up like it's done in Oxnard and Los Angeles and perhaps multiple cities? And I'm sure there's a cost involved in that. And is there a way that, we could move forward to do perhaps some kind of a cost analysis? Because, and I'm kind of reinforcing it, like we recently approved some development off of Hueneme Road. And one of the things that struck me is that they're not even going to be allowing one car per facility because of the new requirements. So then those cars are going to be on the streets. And then when there's street sweeping, I don't know where those cars are going to go. And I think, we need to be considerate of our residents. When we create these conditions, that we're going to be able to find some really good alternatives, because I'm sure nobody wants to get a ticket. And then I guess another thing that I'd like to get some clarification on is I heard that you can park on your front yard during street sweeping days. But well, first of all, a lot of people don't have front yards to be able to do that. And then I'm not sure whether or not there's HOA requirements, so that in fact, maybe the city will allow you to park on your front lawn, but the HOA would not. And then if you did park on, your front lawn, you're causing damage to your sprinklers and everything else like that. So, and then if you're in an HOA, then you're causing those damages to be assessed by everybody. So I'd like a little bit of a clarification as to that particular rule. I had never heard of that rule before. And then people who are in apartments, obviously they can't park in their grass area, even if, they can't do that. So I guess staff, if you could give me some clarification on some of those things, that would be helpful.
With the relation to the parking on the front lawns, I'm going to defer to Tony for that.
Sure. So we don't regulate what HOAs, CC&Rs require. This is primarily for the folks that live in the single family areas basically to the east of the base, north of Pleasant Valley, where they do have lawns, but there may be not enough parking areas, so they can accommodate their vehicles on their lawns should they choose. And they'd be allowed to be there until the end of the street sweeping day. They can keep them there for the day. But again, going back to multifamily complexes or HOAs, we don't regulate those. I mean, if somebody chose to do so, we wouldn't cite them. It would be up to the property management or the HOA's management whether or not they wanted to allow or disallow folks from parking on the turf areas there.
Yeah, I think we need to make a clarification because I don't want the general public to feel that they can in fact do that if their HOA does not allow them to do that. The other thing that I thought was interesting is if you're saying when it rains, people can park on the streets when it's a rainy day?
If it's been determined that through the NOAA weather forecast that there's greater than 50% chance of rain the following day, then we will go ahead and make that determination that we'll just go ahead and notify this sweeping contractor that will cancel. So it prevents a lot of confusion or last minute changes. Sometimes it's confusing because it'll be drizzling. It gives us more time to react beforehand, or not react, but to act beforehand so we can get everybody notified, and including the contractor and all of the residents, so they know that they won't have to do it if that's the case. We're just trying to make it easier so we don't have confusion.
So if it rains, if it rains, or let's say it was supposed to rain and it doesn't rain and someone is parking there, they're not going to get a ticket.
Well, if we made the determination, and again, we would be making this determination the day before they're scheduled to have the street sweeping go through their area, then we would have already notified the sweeping contractor. And so the sweeper wouldn't be showing up, and we'd also be working with parking enforcement, letting them know as well. So parking enforcement wouldn't be out there knowing they wouldn't need to enforce because the sweeper wouldn't be going through.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the confusion, like with it. Just recently, it was supposed to pour one day and it didn't. And then lo and behold, people are told that they don't have to worry about parking that day. And it didn't rain, and they're not going to get a ticket, which is obviously the concern of most residents, not to get a ticket for that type of a thing. Those are all of my calls. Thank you for the report.
You're welcome.
So we have the second part of the report, I think.
Yes, we do. So if we can bring the presentation back up. While we do, I should also say I forgot to do so earlier. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience. So this is the second half of the presentation, and it deals with parking enforcement. So the purpose of our parking enforcement program here in the city is to not only enforce local and state laws related to illegally parked vehicles, but also, again, to work with removing abandoned vehicles from public property, and also, as you just heard from Mr. Camarillo, also making sure that our street sweeper can get through. Our parking enforcement division is very small, and when it's fully staffed in a perfect world, it consists of our parking enforcement manager, one full-time senior parking enforcement officer. And I should say that our manager has been with the city for over 30 years now, and our senior enforcement officer has been with the city for over 20 years now, in this same, while in her parking enforcement capacity. We also would have one full-time parking enforcement officer, and now we do, as of today. It was her first day, so we were able to welcome her. She was actually one of our former explorers. And then once we get this officer trained, we'll go ahead and recruit for a part-time parking enforcement officer as well. Next slide, please. We do have a parking enforcement website, and it's got quite a bit of information on it. I've got the link up there. And what it does is it contains information regarding purchasing annual beach parking passes, which is something parking enforcement handles. A link to paying a person's citation through our third-party citation processing center. Information with regard to street sweeping, such as if it's been canceled due to a rainy day. We are required to also have a payment plan option for folks who cannot afford to pay the standard citation fee. And then we also have our contact information for the division. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about basically the 10 most common infractions that our parking enforcement officers cite for. By far, the most is street sweeping. And that is followed by our beach parking without permits. And I've noted after these, basically our municipal code requirements and or the California Vehicle Code requirements. So our third most popular is parking not in compliance with posted signs. And this could be, say, the 1 or 2 hour parking areas that we have. It could be handicap parking like you see in the picture there. A host of different parking signage requirements. Then we have blocking a fire hydrant. As we've discussed in the past, folks need to be with further than 15 feet from a fire hydrant. Next slide, please. Parking more than 18 inches away from the curb. And the reason why this is important is because otherwise they can be impeding the flow of traffic. So you see in that top picture there, that truck is way away from that curb and into the travel lane. And this is subject to our municipal code and the California Vehicle Code. Then we have not having 2 license plates and or not having correct license tabs. This is actually a correctable offense, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. Then we have blocking or parked across the sidewalk. Many people don't realize that this is a reason for a citation, as we see in the picture here. And that's because folks can't get around, especially if you're in a wheelchair and you can't get past the vehicle and you're forced to go out into the travel lane. Next slide, please. Then we have blocking a driveway. In fact, the Jeep in the top picture is a twofer there where we've got the sidewalk and the driveway blocked at the same time. Again, this is any type of driveway, whether it be a public or private driveway, including your own. Technically, you are subject to a citation if you're blocking a driveway. And then finally, parking in a marked red zone or a fire lane. And this does include alleys. Next slide, please. Our parking enforcement division also can tow vehicles. And there are 3 common reasons why. The first is expired registration. If the vehicle's registration is expired for 6 months or more, the vehicle can be subject to tow. It can also be subject to tow if there are 5 or more outstanding citations that have not been paid. And then following these 2 most popular items, there's also if the vehicle is parked in the same location on the street for more than 72 hours. This doesn't happen often, but if a vehicle has been abandoned, it can be subject to tow. And the reason why is because obviously public streets can be parked upon by anybody, but they're not long-term parking solutions. So we have the vehicle code that also allows towing for these for this reason. Now, this is actually, I think, probably the crux of why we're having this discussion here this evening. And that is, I'm sure many of you see on Nextdoor and Facebook or just get phone calls, emails, or whatnot about folks that are unhappy that they got a parking citation. And so what I've outlined here are 5 of the most common myths that we hear versus the realities. So the first one here is that the parking enforcement officer is singling me out or stalking me. And our parking enforcement manager will receive these comments and she will go ahead and look into it. And what she usually finds is one of 2 things. Either the plate history shows that there are only 1 or 2 citations that have been previously issued, which doesn't exactly support the singling out or stalking accusation. But again, it does show that somebody is not happy that they received their citation and doesn't want to pay it generally. The other time, which is more common, is when the plate history shows a host of citations issued to the same plate, and many of these are often for the same violation. And what this indicates is that the operator of the vehicle continues to park illegally and really is going to probably continue to do so and continue to be cited, which is probably why they feel that they're being singled out. Also, as I just mentioned, we do have a very small staff. And so if these folks are collecting citations, more often than not, they're going to see the same one or two officer names on the citation. So it can look like they are being singled out. But at the same time, our parking enforcement officers are out there enforcing our parking laws. And so if the vehicle does continue to be parked illegally, it is subject to a citation. Next slide, please. This is the one that kind of upsets us the most. As I mentioned, our senior parking enforcement officer has been doing this job for over 20 years now and knows how to do her job very well. And as a staff member, we all take our jobs professionally. So when we hear something like this come up, obviously it raises a red flag, even though we have a feeling it's probably not true. So our enforcement manager will go ahead and review the body cam because our parking enforcement officers use body cams. And generally, I shouldn't say generally, I'm going to say every time, because the city manager can attest to this, I've seen it, other staff have seen it too, where when we get one of these claims and then we look at the body cam footage, it is actually revealed that the complaining party is being untruthful, and they've actually generally or usually done to the parking enforcement officer what they claim was done to them. I would love to show you some of these videos that we have, because it's kind of pretty outrageous what some folks will do and the way they treat our staff over a $53 parking citation. Legally, I don't think I can do that, but it's pretty revealing and outstanding sometimes to see these body cam videos, but it does show us that our staff is doing what they're supposed to be doing out there. I will say you never want to play poker with our senior parking enforcement officer because she's very straight-faced, but she's also very professional in what she does out there. So our next myth is that I was only parked in the space for a minute. And we hear this a lot down at the beach, but we also may hear it in parking, say a handicap parking space. And when a vehicle is parked illegally, is subject to citation. There are no grace periods in parking enforcement laws, whether it be the municipal code or the California Vehicle Code. I will say that once in a while, if our enforcement officer does have time and she sees that somebody is near their vehicle at the beach, she may allow them to obtain a beach parking pass as opposed to get a citation. But again, they have a large enough city and a small enough staff that they need to keep moving. So that is not a given at any time either. Next slide, please. And speaking of beach parking, so we also hear sometimes, why can't a parking enforcement focus on patrolling the paid parking areas? And the reality here is that our parking enforcement officers are hired to enforce parking laws throughout the city and not just in one particular area. Most of the parking violations are not occurring at the beach parking lots. In fact, again, most of them deal with street sweeping, but happen throughout the city. That said, though, especially with our new staff coming on, where we have been short-staffed in the past, and we discussed this, for instance, at one of our last special use permit hearings, we do try to add enforcement during events and holidays. And again, with our additional staffing, we should be able to also bump up the enforcement down at the beach, because we will have our new enforcement officer available early in the mornings and also during the weekends. Next slide, please. And this is the last myth I want to bring up, and that is parking enforcement is a cash cow for the city. And again, as I mentioned, parking enforcement is here to enhance and protect public safety. We're not here to make money. Back in last year, we issued about 9,600 parking citations. And what that generated was about $507,000, which is not an insubstantial amount of change, but when you look at the overall general fund, it's only about 2%. So parking enforcement is not going to make or break our general fund. And yes, all of the parking enforcement revenues do go into the general fund. So it's not just paying for parking enforcement, it's paying for everything that the city's general fund pays for. I do want to mention that of those 9,600 citations, The vast majority of them were paid, or a few hundred of them were contested. And of those few hundred even, only 18 hearing officer requests were actually asked for. So what that really shows is that with parking enforcement, the program right now for the vast majority of folks is working. They just pay their citations. We do have the few that don't want to do that and want to fight us on it. And those again are the ones that we hear about through the myths or the ask for the hearing officer requests, which 9 times out of 10 are also upheld. Next slide, please. And then we'll just continue on. So as I mentioned before, we do have a third party, what we call the Citation Processing Center, that's what they call themselves, and they accept payments for citations, and they also accept or work with us on the reviews as well as any of the hearing officer requirements. And just, I know this has been asked before by council members, and just to let you know that a typical parking citation, at least the municipal code one, is $53. Some of the vehicle code ones run a little bit higher, and ADA handicap placard ones run close to $300. But of our typical $53 citation amount, only 80 cents of that is paid to Citation Processing Center. An additional $12.50 though is paid to the Ventura County Auditor's Office. There may be additional fees required. For instance, the biggest one is if a citation remains unpaid. But a maximum amount that the city generally gets from a typical citation is $39.70. And again, that goes to the city's general fund. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about if you happen to get a parking citation, you either need to pay it or contest it within 21 days. The information for all of this is on the back of the citation. We don't take payments in City Hall any longer. That's all handled through Citation Processing Center. The parking enforcement manager reviews all of the appeals or the contested citations. And she'll look at these situation, the body cam footage, the history of the plate and whatnot, and also determine whether or not the citation is to be upheld or dismissed. If it's upheld, the decision may be contested further again through the hearing officer. And the hearing officer is not a city employee. They're part of the third party Citation Processing Center. And then again, if the citation is not paid or appealed on time, it is subject to a penalty. Typically, it's double the amount of the violation. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, some of the vehicle code violations are correctable. So for instance, this is not having a front license plate inside it. So what you do is you install your front license plate, you bring the proof of correction either to City Hall or to any police agency. It'll be signed off and the violation is reduced down to $10. It still needs to be paid on time, but there is a vast reduction in the amount of the citation. So at the end of the day, I just want to remind everybody that the purpose of parking enforcement is not to make money, it's not to make lives difficult out there, it's to enhance public safety by enforcing parking laws, as well as to ensure our streets are clean in compliance with our stormwater permit. Again, parking enforcement is very black and white. Like I said, there are no grace periods or whatnot. The bottom line is it all needs to either be enforced or none of it enforced. And the city has chosen to enforce parking requirements and laws. And so with that, this is just one of our, I guess, roadshow items for parking enforcement. Staff working with our PIO is working on putting together a series of short public service announcements regarding reasons why parking citations are issued and how to avoid them. We may actually be asking you, the council, to star in some of these PSAs. We're also planning on doing some for code compliance because sometimes you'll see, for instance, on Nextdoor or whatnot, folks are complaining about parking enforcement when actually they're complaining about code compliance and vice versa. We'll also be most likely including building and safety. And so my final picture there is a winner. Let's count the number of violations this little vehicle has on it right there as it was waiting for a tow. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. I saw, let's see, I don't know who I saw first, so I'm just gonna, Councilperson Hernandez.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but I think Councilman Gama was before me, so I'll defer to him.
I'm gonna have the Councilperson Gama.
Thank you. I'm a little bit distracted right now. I have a little bit of a household family thing happening. So just if I do appear distracted or moving about, that's why. It's nothing too serious, but everything's gonna be all right. I think that I really appreciate the information, and I do appreciate the fact that street sweeping is very on top of it. And so I know now I've been conditioned to move my car on Thursday, and I get it. Sometimes I forget and get a ticket. 901, you get a ticket. Very efficient operation. My only criticism is, as a resident, and I would feel much better if they were just as aggressive with parking enforcement at the beach as they are with street sweeping. And I see violators all the time. And again, I don't, and I know that staffing's been an issue. So that's my only want, is for the residents to know that, hey, because we need that parking revenue to take care of our beach area, because there's a lot of expense down there that we have. And so, and I would strongly encourage all residents who go to the beach. Okay, I gotta.
Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Mr. Stewart for the presentation, and to express to his staff how much I appreciate the work that is being done out there. The job of parking enforcement probably has to be one of the most difficult, thankless jobs in the city. And I see the language on social media, and my heart goes out to those parking enforcement officers, because they do a great job. And when I observe them, whether they're ticketing me or they're ticketing another car, they are very professional. And I just want to extend my thanks to them and tell them to keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to them. Much appreciated.
Councilperson Perez.
I want to repeat Councilmember Hernandez's sentiments. They get a lot of flack, and I think it's unfair, and they take a lot of hate for doing a good job when our city looks really nice. And if it wasn't for their diligence, we would look like other cities who have no such enforcement. So I appreciate what they do. And I have been subject to tickets and, being guilty of not moving my vehicle. So, I'm not immune to it, but I just want to thank them for their work. And I'm glad to see that we're increasing the parking enforcement, so that will help with the beach area and other areas that we're missing out on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I've talked personally to a lot of the parking enforcement people, usually when I haven't got a ticket, but I watch them in action and stuff, and they're very nice to the people. In fact, many cases, I have seen them kind of like provide some guidance when there's a potential problem when they've had a time. So I don't think they're out to get the people of our community. Do you have any, I know you mentioned that the biggest percent, I guess it kind of relates to the whole theme of tonight. What is the percentage of the people that get parking tickets for street sweeping?
Sure.
I know it's the largest, but is it by a little, a lot?
I actually have the numbers right in front of me here. Street sweeping last year, we issued, of those 9,700 citations, 5,279 were for street sweeping. The next highest was beach parking at 879. So you can see there's a vast majority for street sweeping, and then everything went down from there, with the exception of the fire hydrants were also by 813. But quite a difference between street sweeping and the rest of what we cite for.
And I guess I would just kind of reinforce my theme that I think because it's such a large percentage of people, I'm wondering whether they just feel destitute that they have no other place to park during sweeping times, that, you know, they get desperate and leave their car for a short period of time. So that's something to look for. I mean, maybe we can investigate further.
Rollins, I had one more comment that to follow on that regarding the street sweeping. I just want to reiterate that I understand this. We have a parking issue in the city. We have homes that have multiple vehicles and not enough places, not enough spaces, I myself included. So I would look forward to future conversations where we can come up with some really good concepts on how to improve and reduce those numbers of tickets. That would be nice to know.
Yeah, no, thank you for those comments to read. Without giving like the specifics, Mr. Stewart, now that you've been able to hire a second parking enforcement officer, in general, how do you hope, how do you plan to use that person? Are you going to double up during the same periods of time? Are you going to extend the periods of time that there's coverage? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, and this is what we did with our previous staffing levels as well. So our senior parking enforcement officer works a standard 980 week like the rest of the staff. But of course, parking enforcement's needed extra hours. So the goal is to have our new parking enforcement officer start earlier in the day. Again, the major reason for that would be to go patrol the beach parking lots, and then also to have them work on the assist with the street sweeping, as well as work the weekends, because right now our senior parking enforcement staff member did not normally work weekends unless it was an overtime situation. So now we can go ahead and rectify that. And then when we get our part-time enforcement officer, it'll be primarily for assistance during the weekends again. It'll be good to have them come on hopefully during the summer when they're most needed down at the beach.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I know, like, you know, it was a topic of conversation at one point in time when we have events and parking is at a premium. That's when your staff will go into full force.
That is the goal, yes.
Great, thank you. Any other comments before we move on? I'm assuming Mr. Gama doesn't have any further thoughts on this at this point anyway. So we're going to move on to our consent agenda at this time. Thank you again, both of you, for the great report. Consent agenda. I'm going to read the titles and the items of the consent agenda calendar prior to motion, and then we will approve them as a body unless somebody wants to pull something off at this particular point in time. So here we go. Number 5, approve the minutes of the City Council of the regular meeting of February 22nd, 2022. Recommendation is to approve the minutes. Receive and file the number 6, receive and file the financial cash disbursements for February 9th, 2022 through February 28th, 2022. The recommendation is to receive and file the disbursements. Number 7, it's the second reading by title only, waiving full reading and the adoption of the ordinance approving the development agreement number PHDA-898 BB and SE Incorporated Cannabis Dispensary Company located at 2667 North Ventura Road. The recommendation is to read by title only, waiving the full reading of the ordinance and adopt the proposed ordinance approving the department agreement of number PHDA-898. Number 8, second reading by title only, waiving full reading of the adoption of the ordinance approving the development agreement number PHD A-900, The Fire Garden LLC Cannabis Dispensary located at 2661 North Ventura Road. The recommendation is to read by title only, waiving the reading of the ordinance and adopt the proposed ordinance approving the development agreement number PHD 900. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent?
Move approval.
Second.
Second, okay. May we have a vote? Madam Clerk.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez.
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Okay, there appears to be a second part of this. Madam Clerk, do you have proof of publication as required by law? Do we have a complete file of the reports and exhibits?
I believe that's for the public hearing.
Okay. Could be, I may have skipped a page, I'm sorry.
Yes, we're on item 9, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I skipped a page. Okay. Okay, so now we will move on to the public hearings. Number 9, amendments to the cannabis ordinance regarding cannabis lounges. The hearing is now opened at 9:11. Do any members of the council have any conflicts to disclose? Madam Clerk, do you have a proof of publication as required by law? Do we have a complete file of the reports and exhibits?
Yes, we do.
Right. Will staff please present the report? That's going to be Mr. Stewart, our Community Development Director.
Yes, good evening. This is item 4 or 5 this evening for me. So this is our cannabis ordinance amendment, and it's pertaining to cannabis lounges. Next slide, please. So as the council will recall, back on December 21st, staff asked the council to consider allowing cannabis lounges in conjunction with established dispensaries here in the city. And after considering staff's presentation along with a thorough presentation by the Wheelhouse Dispensary, which is one of the prospective lounge operators, council authorized staff to proceed with amending the city's existing cannabis ordinance to establish such standards. Next slide, please. Now, as the City Council knows, and for the public's education, and as Chief Salinas mentioned earlier, our program has benefited the city in terms of revenues generated. It has increased safety and reduced crimes in the shopping centers where we have cannabis dispensaries located. However, as everybody's aware, we'll soon have competition with additional dispensaries coming online in Oxnard and Ventura. Therefore, with our proven cannabis track record and to continue to take advantage of the revenues generated and to allow us to evolve with the industry, that's why we are now looking to potentially allow these lounges so that we can stay ahead of the curve. Next slide, please. So the thought of a cannabis lounge is to provide a place for folks to use cannabis in a controlled atmosphere. The concept is similar to a bar where customers will come in, they'll obtain cannabis from the employees of the lounge, consume it, and then leave. Similar to a bar, the customers would not be able to bring in their own cannabis or consume it outside of the lounge. So far, we have experienced interest from Wheelhouse as well as Tradecraft Farms for being allowed to have cannabis lounges in conjunction with their existing dispensary operations. Next slide, please. So with regard to the concept, based on the proposal from Wheelhouse and previous City Council discussion, the following features are recommended to allow the city to regulate cannabis lounges at the same level that we regulate other cannabis businesses. And I want to preface this by saying that this is similar to when we first introduced our cannabis program on our first ordinance back in 2017, where it was for medicinal purposes only. But as we quickly learned, our dispensaries could operate well, and they were. And so they wanted to also have adult use cannabis. So we amended our ordinance. And they came back, amended their previous business approvals, and we moved forward. So I realized that at the last city council meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not some of these concepts were really needed or not. Overall, the majority was that they would be. But again, I just want to remind that if we find out that our lounges are operating really well and can be loosened up in time, we can always come back and amend our ordinance again. So, but right now, what we're recommending each lounge do is that they would be operated by a dispensary currently in business in the city. They'd be located immediately adjacent to or within the existing dispensary. The lounges would be member only, and this would allow city and the management of the lounges to have better control over their clientele, including behavior, limiting intoxication, limiting the number of patrons, and also if, for instance, a patron became a problem, they would be basically kicked out of the membership. The lounges would be regulated with regard to operations, odor control, et cetera, in the same manner as the affiliated dispensary is. And we'd have a cap of 5 lounges allowed in the city at this time. Next slide, please. So since our ordinance does not currently provide provisions for lounges, obviously we do need to amend it, which is what we're discussing here this evening. So what would happen is that the ordinance is being presented for first reading or introduction this evening. At our next meeting, which is scheduled for March 21st, we have the second reading and adoption. At the same time, we do have our implementing resolution, and we bring that forward on March 21st also for adoption, with it being amended accordingly to also deal with cannabis lounge requirements. And then as far as the planning entitlements and whatnot, should an existing operator want to add a lounge to their operations, what the planning entitlements would include would be major modifications to their existing conditional use permit and their development agreement. The reason why is because that would allow you, the city council, to have the ultimate approval authority over each lounge proposal. Next slide, please. And then with regard to our fiscal impact, so our cannabis dispensaries are currently required to pay 5% of their gross revenues towards the general fund. And the same would be for the additional revenues that would be generated by the cannabis lounges in affiliation with these dispensaries. So we see this basically as an additional revenue generator for the city's general fund. Next slide, please. And so it is recommended that the city council introduce for first reading by title only and waive further reading an ordinance of the city council amending the municipal code regarding cannabis requirements here in the city. Schedule a second reading for the council's March 21st, 2022 meeting date to consider adoption of the proposed ordinance. And designate the city clerk to publish a summary of the ordinance at least 5 days before the city council meeting at which the proposed ordinance is considered for adoption. Next slide, please. And so that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions. Zahir Walji, who has the next item also up, is also here to answer any questions that you may have with regard to the potential just idea of operating a cannabis lounge here in the city. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the report. Before we move on to council comments and questions, are there any public comments regarding this item at this time?
I have no public comments for this item. If members of the public would like to speak on this item, now is the time.
Okay. Are there any members of the public out there wishing to speak? Do I see any I don't see any raised hands. Perhaps you can help me if any of these people have requested to speak. Do you have any indication? I see no hands at this time. Okay.
I do not see any.
Okay, so with that, let us move on to, does the council have any questions? And I see first raised hand, Councilperson Gama.
Thank you. I think it's common that we ask to. I'm getting feedback here. I'm not sure why, but I would like to hear from Zahir, if I'd like to hear his positive, enthusiastic description of what's going to happen.
Okay, so we will have Mr. Z make his presentation if he has. Does any other councilman have any initial questions of the staff report?
It's for 5 lounges. Is that what I saw? A maximum of 5 lounges?
That's correct.
And how did we come up with that number? I'm just curious.
That was the number that Chief Salinas and I discussed, and we discussed with the council back in December. And the idea was would be, looking at our existing dispensaries, we felt that would probably be the maximum that we'll see actually be able to be easily accommodated. Some of our dispensaries are quite small, and so they won't have the room to do so, whereas, for instance, Tradecraft, HPC, Wheelhouse do have the room. So that's why we came up with 5 at this time.
I actually
I apologize. I thought we were on the next item because of my issues over here. But anyways, I'll wait till we get to the next item.
I have a couple follow-up questions, I guess, in line with Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Regarding the 5 lounges, was there some thought as to why existing cannabis operations would have, for lack of a better word, a monopoly on being able to get those 5 lounges? I'm just thinking like a liquor store, and a liquor store like a cannabis facility. It would be like them getting the monopoly on having a bar because they sell liquor. Is there any thought or opening to expanding this in case there was another company that wanted to set up a business like a bar separate from a cannabis dispensary?
We, in our discussions and in the research of other cities that have lounges, we felt that to best ensure that our program continues to be as successful as it is with regard to safety and being able to regulate and whatnot, we wanted to make sure that our existing dispensaries be the operators of these lounges because they already have a set track record. As we've discussed, we're coming up to the basically the cap of our dispensaries that we'd allow in the city anyway. Lounges are considered to be dispensary, basically additional operationals for dispensaries. And so if we were to allow above and beyond, at least allowing every one of our existing dispensaries to have a lounge, then we basically need to relook at the cap of dispensaries. Now, if the council, this is definitely the time to do it. If the council opts to allow more than 5, we could certainly accommodate that, but definitely the idea is that at least all of these lounges be affiliated with our existing dispensaries because again, they're known entities and we know that they will operate their lounges accordingly.
Yeah, and I don't know, I suppose we can legally do that. I just had a concern that we're limiting our existing 14 as the only ones who have the opportunity to have a lounge, and if they met all the rules and regulations. And I guess then the follow-up question would be, if we were to do that, what if a existing dispensary wanted to have a lounge, but they don't have the space, but they find the space someplace else within the city to do that? Would that be legal based on this ordinance?
It may not actually be legal based on state law even, because cannabis operations under one entity need to be in contiguous locations. So for instance, a dispensary can't have its half of its operations in one location, half in another location. They need to basically be under the same roof, or at least immediately adjacent to each other. And one of the reasons that that's so important is, again, for safety, where because the product is being moved in and out of the dispensary into the lounge, as well as making sure that the employees also remain safe. We want to keep the areas contiguous to each other. That said, though, if for instance, say we have a small dispensary in the middle of a shopping center and a location comes up for rent next door to them, then there would be certainly an opportunity for them to expand into that with a lounge.
Yeah, it would, I don't know, to me, it would seem fair that like they would be able to, if we have if we're going with a well-respected dispensary and they find another location that they've met all the rules and regulations and guidelines that are laid out here, that they would in fact be able to do such. I mean, that's one point of thought anyway. And then finally, I guess would be within the, since we're limiting it to 5, is it going to kind of be like a first come, first serve, or how? I mean, how are we going to evaluate if like a number of dispensaries like the idea and want to get into this business at approximately the same time?
Well, certainly with the 5, it would be first come, first serve.
Okay. Okay. So we're probably going to limit, this ordinance would just limit the ability for people who have enough space already to do it.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Z, would you like to add to this discussion?
Absolutely. One of the things we're looking forward to is actually adding more revenue to the city with the fact that Oxnard and other cities are coming live. We'd like to be one of the first dispensaries to have a lounge in the marketplace, and same with any of our competitors in Port Hueneme. We're looking to drive traffic and drive revenues here. Additionally, as Tony was saying, with the state regulations, the dispensary, there are no lounge licenses and regulations currently. Currently, the state only has retail operations, and that's how Hollywood, Palm Desert, and other locations have worked the ordinance, is attaching to the dispensary. For us, we just relocated our LA location, and to relocate, we had to apply for a new state license to share and get that information, because each address is attached to its own state license. So that's a part of the process, and that's one of the reasons when we did our presentation and we put in for an amendment for this lounge, we had asked to have it attached to the building. Again, we do have the space. We do have other spaces we'd like to convert into lounges too that are separate, but again, the state ordinance isn't there, and that was one of the challenges.
Okay, so do we have any other comments at this point? So there's no further comments by the council or the public.
Mayor Rollins, I guess
Yes.
my only concern still is just the fact that we'd limit it to 5. I don't know if we should try to say like 7 or 6. I don't know what's a good number. I don't know if maybe 5 is the right answer. I don't know how anyone else feels about this, but other than that, like I think it's good. I just 5 is just the number that I was thinking about. Maybe it's not enough. I really don't know. So.
And I guess to reiterate, if another company comes in and they find a location that they want to have strictly a lounge and they meet all the requirements that this ordinance would provide for it, they would not be able to do it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Again, the ordinance is designed to require that the lounge be operated in conjunction with an existing dispensary.
And Mr. Stewart, let's just say like in 3-4 years from now or 5, I don't know. It seems like this is like something that's booming, especially like in our city. We can obviously just change the ordinance, right?
That is correct. That's what I mentioned early on, that we're kind of looking at this like we did when we initially started the entire program, where it's sort of baby steps, so to speak, to try it out. And then if I find out that it's working out really well, we can come back and loosen up the standards with an ordinance amendment.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Okay, I have to read through all of this before you guys make a motion, it appears.
I have another comment, please, if we could.
Certainly. Councilperson Gama.
I think having 5 lounges is a good start, but I think the problem that we have is that, you know, we're going to see consolidation of the market clearly. You know, in my view, I think we have too many dispensaries, and it would be nice if it was equalized. In other words, if we had a lower cap, and then it would make the 5 lounge thing be probably a little more equitable. But and I support having a lounge that's controlled very similar to a bar, as opposed to cordoning off public areas and then allowing consumption to take place. So I think the lounge is a really good idea considering where we are. But I think our problem is the fact that we have all these dispensaries, 2 and 2.4 more dispensaries than the lounge number. And then with Oxnard coming on and other cities coming on, I think we're going to see a consolidation. So I'm just trying to balance those 2 things. You know, I think there is going to be a consolidation. So I think 5 may not be enough, but I certainly don't think we should increase it to 14 or whatever the number of current dispensaries we have, because I think we all agree there is going to be consolidation, and there's going to be some heavy competition. And I want our city to be successful with as many dispensaries as we can, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be all 12 of them, you know, surviving what's sure to come. So anyways, I just want to make that point, is that I think this is the next step, and I think it's reasonable. And is there a second on this?
No, before we get in a second, I have to follow the protocol. So if there's no further discussion, we will close the public hearing, the time being 9:32. I'm now going to read you the recommendation. Number 1, introduce the first reading by title only and waive further reading an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme amending Article 3 of Municipal Code to supersede Ordinance 780, which comprises Chapter 12, to implement various laws of the state of California by allowing medicinal and non-medicinal and/or commercial cannabis facilities within the city, subject to the regulatory parameters to protect public health, safety, and welfare, and schedule a second hearing of the City Council on March 21st, 2022, meeting to consider the adoption of a proposed ordinance and designate the city clerk to publish and summarize a proposed ordinance at least 5 days before the City Council meeting at which the proposed ordinance will be considered for adoption. So now, may I have a motion and a second? I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
And I'll second.
I think that's what you did. Am I correct, Mayor?
Yes, that's the way it was before. Mhm.
Okay. Second, Madam Clerk, can you please take a roll call vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Okay, we're
Motion
gonna,
passes unanimously.
great. We're gonna move on to number 10. Adopt a resolution granting the special use permit number 5-22 for the Wheelhouse Plaza anniversary event. The hearing is now, I'm sorry, we're gonna have a report by Mr. Stewart. The hearing is now open at 9. Okay, wait, we're gonna have the report first. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. Hopefully for last time this evening. This is a request by Wheelhouse Plaza for their 3rd anniversary special event. Next slide, please. So what the applicant is proposing to do is to hold a street fair within the parking lot of the Wheelhouse building, which is generally located at 521 West Channel Islands Boulevard. It will be held on Sunday, March 27th, 2022 from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The applicant is expecting 1,000 to 1,500 visitors, and it'll be free admission, also open to all ages. There will be booths for various cannabis and non-cannabis vendors, food trucks. There will be no cannabis, however, sold outside of the adjacent Wheelhouse dispensary. Therefore, that's why it's open to all ages. There'll be a stage with live music and entertainment. Parking will be either in the adjacent lots, but the applicant is also proposing to prepay for all of the spaces down at Hueneme Beach Parking Lot A to accommodate overflow parking and to shuttle the folks parking down at the beach up to the event area. Parking will be enforced by the police explorers, and there will be police staff also on hand. Next slide, please. And this is basically the site plan showing the building, the subject building, building number 1 there at the north top right corner with the vendors in the parking lot between it and the Hardy Mall building, with the food trucks back towards the Harbor Lights community, which is on the bottom of the site plan there. And next slide, please. So this is similar to an event that the applicant obtained a special use permit for back in 2019. It was a little bit smaller, but very similar in concept. Whereas last year's event due to COVID was, as you will recall, a drive-through charitable event down at Beach Parking Lot C. So just like those last 2 events, the applicant is proposing a generous charitable component, and all proceeds generated by the sales from the event will be donated to several organizations, including Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Ventura County, the Boys and Girls Club, as well as Port Hueneme Police Department's programs such as the Police Explorers and also Coastal Keepers. Next slide, please. The reason why the SUP is required for this type of event is because of the size of it with regard to parking and traffic control, the outdoor entertainment, which will be amplified, and therefore the proximity to adjacent residences. The project is considered exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act because it is temporary use of the land. Next slide, please. So with regard to fiscal impact, there'll be revenue generated from the paid parking spaces that are paid for down at Lot A. The applicant will pay for all costs incurred by city staff and resources. As I mentioned, there'll be some of the police department staff there. In fact, Chief Salinas wrote the parking program, which was attached at the end of your packet. And then some of the proceeds from the sales of the event will be donated to the city's police department programs. Next slide, please. And so with that, it is recommended that the City Council adopt the resolution that conditionally approves SUP number 05-22. I'm available for any questions. And as you all know, Mr. Lalji, who owns and operates the Wheelhouse Plaza, is here to also answer any questions along with his His event designer, so to speak, is also here also to discuss the project a little bit further with you, should you choose. Thank you.
Okay, so before we do any housekeeping, I gotta do a little housekeeping. This hearing did start at 9:35 p.m. And before we get into any questions, do any members of the council have any conflicts to disclose at this time? Okay, are there any members of the public that have a comment at this time, Madam Clerk?
I have no written proof of comments for this item. And just to affirm the proof of publication, we do have proof of publication and a complete file of reports and exhibits.
Thank you very much. So does the council have any questions of staff at this time? Do I see any? I see none. If there are no further comments, we will close the hearing at 9:40 p.m. We have a recommendation before us. I'm going to read the exact resolution, and that is a resolution to adopt a resolution granting special use permit number 5-22 of Wellhouse Plaza anniversary event. The recommendation, let's see, we opened the public hearing, we took testimony and documentary evidence, we closed the public hearing, we adopt the resolution, and we took such additional related action that may be desired. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
So we have a motion by Councilman Gama and a second by Councilman Hernandez, I think. Okay.
That was Council Member Perez.
Councilmember Perez. You're both, when I hear you, you're both speaking at the same location. Okay, very good. Madam Clerk, can we take a roll call vote at this point in time?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Councilman Perez.
Councilmember Perez,
Your microphone is off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes, congratulations, Mr. Z. You have the confidence of the council, obviously, with no discussion.
Thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate this. This is one of my favorite parts of the year, is celebrating our opening and giving back to the community. You know, we did a very large check the previous year, and then last year we even did a bigger check. We're hoping to raise the bar another level and go to the next level and really support all our nonprofits and be good neighbors. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. We are now moving on to item number 11. And that's an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of the Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme to establish a teen center and an Orvine Center at the Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center. I'm excited about this presentation, and we have Ms. Hanley to give that presentation.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. How is my volume? Can you hear me?
Very good.
Great. Item 11 on the agenda pertains to a request to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme to establish a teen center at the Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center. In an effort to serve teenagers in the Port Hueneme community, a partnership has been proposed to provide a dedicated space for evidence-based approaches to academic support and social emotional health for Port Hueneme teens and adolescents to recover from the disruption caused by COVID-19. This effort will be targeting roughly 2,000 youth in Port Hueneme between the ages of 13 and 20 years of age. Next slide, please. At present, the Port Hueneme Boys and Girls Clubhouse serves youth as young as 5 years old, making it vital to have a separate and defined area for teens. This not only allows staff to address issues specific to teens, but makes members of all ages feel more welcome and at home at the club. The Port Hueneme Boys and Girls Club existing teen center is a converted racquetball court. Teens have reported the space does not feel comfortable and have conveyed a perception that the club is for younger members only. The Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center has the potential to offer a distinct space for teens with the conversion of the senior activity classroom. This proposed location is ideally situated along a highly trafficked Hueneme High School student walking path, and teens frequently linger on the community center grounds. Moreover, the community center is most regularly rented by community members hosting teen birthday celebrations. There is already an informal association and familiarity with the community center by the teen population within the city. Next slide, please. Given the standalone configuration of the now senior activity room, complemented by the outdoor adjacent restrooms, this classroom space stands out as the most eligible room to be transitioned into the teen center function. I've outlined and highlighted the exact space for reference, as you can see on this slide. All current activities within the senior activity room can be seamlessly absorbed by the remaining classrooms, both C and D. Additionally, use of the Boys and Girls Club House Gymnasium would continue to be an offering for teen program participants, coordinated and overseen by Boys and Girls Club staff. Next slide, please. I'd like to next outline the Teen Center staffing component. The Boys and Girls Club has proposed staffing the Teen Center with a teen program specialist and youth development specialist during the center's hours of operation. This would consist of 4 hours per day, Monday through Friday. In addition, the Teen Center would be served 4 hours weekly by a specialized math and a specialized English tutor to assist with homework. Staff will be overseen by the Boys and Girls Club Director of Programs and Director of Operations. We want to acknowledge that engaging Port Hueneme teens from the onset is critical for the success and stewardship of the program. A teen committee will be organized by the Boys and Girls Club, consisting of Port Hueneme teens and adolescents, Boys and Girls Club staff, City of Port Hueneme staff, and stakeholders to provide direction for the selection of amenities and features to be included in the classroom interior remodel. The outcome will be a tailor-made space designed by our teen community. Next slide, please. As far as speaking to the fiscal impact, previously authorized funds have been earmarked, $25,000 from ARPA designated for equipment and youth programming, and another $10,000 to the Boys and Girls Club from the Community Benefit Fund allocated for at-risk teen programming support. Additionally, the city is to provide ongoing facility maintenance and provide the utilities that serve this space. Next slide, please. It is staff's recommendation that the City of Port Hueneme provide the senior activity room at the Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme for exclusive use for a period of 10 years. As stated, the City of Port Hueneme will provide $25,000 in ARPA funding to remodel the existing space to accommodate for teen-centered programming. The remodel will include the purchase of necessary furniture, equipment, and technology. Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation. Myself, along with Aaron Antrim, CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, and Andrew Peak, Director of Advancement in Philanthropy, are all available for any questions that you may have.
Okay.
And Charles, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide while we take questions. This is the 2021 impact report highlighting the Boys and Girls Club's achievements. And it's much more interesting to look at than having the slide on display.
Okay. Wow, this is really pretty cool. Okay, council comments and questions. Councilperson Gama.
I'm really excited for this. My inspiration tonight talked about all the different youth programs out there, and I think it's one of the greatest things that's happening in our city is the breadth and the width of our youth programming. It covers such a wide array. And then here we are introducing another component, which is focused on teenagers. It couldn't come at a better time. We know that COVID has been particularly hard on students of all ages, but I think the risk management component and dealing with teenage related issues in this center is very wise, and I think it's going to be a huge success, and I'm very excited to support it. And I'm just blown away at how topical and timely, and this is just a great program that we all could hopefully support 100%. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Councilperson Perez.
Yes, I just want to reiterate Mr. Gama's comments. This is such a great thing that this community has needed for so long. And I'm looking forward to the impact it's going to make on the teens, the community. And when we look at things to spend money on or where to put our efforts into trying to improve our city, this is hands down one of the best areas to do so. And this is what our city is. Our children are going to be the next generation, and this will be such a great place for them to learn, in addition to all the other programs that we're trying to implement and that we have going on. I think it's going to make a huge impact in our community.
Councilperson Hernandez, I don't see your face, but do you have any comments?
No, thank you, Ms. Hanley, for presenting this and taking a leadership role in making this happen. I think it's wonderful for our teens, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Council Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
No, I think this is going to be really cool. So excited.
Yeah. I mean, this whole program has been something that I've wanted to see. I think it's probably one of the reasons why I got myself involved in the city council, is to have more programs for the community, especially more programs for the youth in our committee. And I'm just excited that city staff and the Boys and Girls Club staff have come to develop what I think is a foundation of an excellent program in the future. I mean, this is the age where kids need positive role models and mentors the most. This is the age where kids want to express their interests and help develop their positive self-concept. It's wonders for mental health and everything else, where kids can find something that they can really get excited about in a positive manner. So I'm excited about that. I just had one question, do you guys have any concept? I noticed that you were going to be doing it 4 hours per day. Did you have any kind of idea of like when you were going to have those 4 hours per day happen? I guess this would be to both city and Boys and Girls Club staff.
Sure, Erin, I'm not sure if you'd like to address that specifically.
Sure. I just wanted to say to Mayor Rollins and the city council members, as well as city staff, thank you so much for entertaining this. And it's so great to hear, that the city council of Port Hueneme is 100% behind the kids and the teenagers of Port Hueneme. So thank you so much for that. Rich, we really want to make sure that the hours for the teen center are open a little later than traditional hours. So we're thinking either 3 to 7 or 3:30 to 7:30. We really want to try to be open as late as possible for teenagers, but certainly after school hours.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good logic. I know when I was a youngster, as a teen, being able to be out, a little bit later, where I had the independence of not being around the little kids was a good thing. And it gave my leaders a chance to kind of work on me, be it good or bad. So thank you again for presenting this. I'm excited. let's see, the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme to establish a dedicated teen center space at the Orvane S. Carpenter Center. May I have a motion?
I will make a motion, and I'd also just throw out there that that might be a good location for a skate park.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Gama and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Madam Clerk, may we have a vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez.
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Excitingly, yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming and getting this all together. I know anytime two agencies get together to coordinate things, I think that's an accomplishment within itself, and kudos to all of you who are involved. Okay, we will now move on to the city manager's comments and reports. At this time,
Honorable City Council, I'll try to keep this quick. I do have some items though. On the 5th of March, last Friday, was Employee Appreciation Day, and we are blessed to have the city staff that find ways to work magic throughout every day, throughout many years. And in particular, the last 2 years, despite the COVID, supply chain issues, inflation, our city team has found a way to persevere, move a variety of different things forward, and sustain services the entire time without having to compromise anything. So for that, I'm extremely proud of our employees. They do wonderful things every day for the city. I don't want to steal too much of the mayor's thunder, but we are going to go into week 2 of the first international robotic competition. We have the remaining half of the 56 teams competing this weekend on Friday and Saturday. The mayor and I had an opportunity to do behind the scenes tour and engagement with a variety of the teams. And although Hueneme High and Ventura Unified did not have a robot for the competition, they were participants they observed, and the Ventura team got to manage the Singapore team's robot because the Singapore team could not travel for COVID. For those that have never been involved with a robotic competition, it's amazing in terms of collaboration, in terms of personal, professional development, leadership development, and esprit de corps between kids from the entire international community of STEM. So it was a great event. This weekend, though, is where we celebrate our Community Benefit Fund, which has supported this at $7,500. So it's going to be a media event from 9 to 11 on Saturday of this week. We did have one casualty of sorts this past weekend because of weather, as Councilmember Gama was talking about. We had displays set up, and we're doing outreach for the community to participate in helping us do the design of a very interesting and amazing playground for the beach, as well as a dog park. Although we packed that event up a little bit early because of wind, it resumes in the library, and we'll look to do another event so that the community can participate and imagining what those two things can look like and be in our city. We're closing in on the design, and then we'll quickly shift to contracting and build this thing over the next year. Skate parks, thanks for bringing that up too. Although we have ARPA approved skate park, we've elected to do a couple of mobile skate park events, and we're in the process of contracting for one. And we're looking to put a couple of those together to measure and probe the interest in the site location for a future skate park. And we look to have that potentially in April. We did some business outreach this past week too. The county has identified business grants for micro businesses at $2,500 per business. We sent email and we put out in our social media knowledge-based information and also offered support for any business that needs help doing that. I want to make sure that gets out. And I want to make sure the council and the public know that we're closing in on another community benefit fund round where we nominate and put projects into play for funding of our community benefit fund with the port. This next council meeting on the 21st, we have 2 projects that we will review. One will be a art mural project where we have our mayor and Councilmember Hernandez on a group that is building that particular project out, and they'll brief it, and we can discuss that as council and approve it, move it forward. And then there's a monument one that the port has put some time and effort in to define that. So those 2 projects will be there, but we can also take in new projects that we want to take to the joint committee and eventually approve projects in the future. So if the public wants to either contact the city or go through their representatives on council, or council would like to promote and present a project, by all means, move those through the city staff. We'll make sure those get on the agenda on the 21st. And with that, Mayor, honorable council members, I return the meeting back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that report. Exciting things are happening in Port Hueneme. So at this point in time, we're going to have council members' reports and comments. And I am going to start with Councilperson Perez.
The only comment I have is just to remind everyone, if they didn't know, the NAMI kickoff event and 40th anniversary of celebration is March 19th. Register. If you need the email registration, let me know. I can make sure to get it to you. That'll be a barbecue at the rec center and a lot of stuff going on, some speakers, and that'll be our kickoff for the NAMI walk that's happening in May.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. First of all, I want to compliment your shirt and tie. Absolutely stunning. You wear it very well. I really like your shirt, so I might have to steal it from you. The STEM robotics program is so inspiring. I mean, I am so amazed, and it's just amazing to see some of these teams, how sophisticated they are. It's like a NASCAR pit area. And then you see the younger teams, the developing teams that are getting inspired by these more experienced teams. And then you see teams stepping up to help out a team from Singapore. I mean, this is good stuff. And it's been such a pleasure I've been stopping in there as much as I can to see the progress. And it's a wonderful thing that we're a part of, and it's just amazing. This past weekend, like I mentioned earlier, we had a beach cleanup, and I literally was going to throw in the towel. I thought nobody's going to show up, and so many kids and young adults showed up, and parents, and we did a wonderful job. City staff was very much involved with moving dumpsters around the beach, and it was just a Herculean effort. And to everyone that helped, I just want to say a big thank you. And then this youth teen center with the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, if you look across what's going on in our city, there's some great youth programs that are making a big difference. And the array of the youth programming is getting wider and wider and wider. And it's just such a joy for us to be a part of that. Because our community has needed this, and we're delivering it. And it's opening up big doors for all the young students in our area, and I couldn't be prouder to be associated with this city at this time. And it's just a wonderful time to be a city council member in the city of Port Hueneme. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. It's a very positive time. Let's see, we have Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I on? Okay,
You are.
okay, I'm on. I really don't have any committee reports to report on. I've attended all my committees this last few weeks. VRSD, SCAG meeting, VCREA, and I'm sure there's others, but in any case, everything's pretty status quo there. But I did want to mention, I don't know if any of you saw the call to action by the Surfrider Foundation, who is going to provide public comments at the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board meeting in support of the Ormond Beach trash pollution letter. I did ask the city manager to send a letter, but it's due before the 10th. So I'm not sure how it's going to happen. I do plan to participate in the public hearing and offer comments. But if we could somehow get a letter to the LA Regional Quality Board, Water Quality Board, that would be great. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, Mr. State Manager, but I hope we can get that letter in support of those efforts. And then, Mr. Mayor, there was also a letter taking to mayors taking a pledge about protecting the monarchs. And I was going to jump on it, but it was addressed to mayors, so I don't know if you saw it, but I'm wondering if you were going to follow through on that.
Yes, I did see that. And as you know, I think multiple council people have been very much in interest in developing, promoting the monarchs. I know even at our own museum, we've been pushing that for a number of years. So yes, I guess we could, I don't know how we would make a motion.
No, you don't need a motion. You just need to send a letter, Mayor. That's all. You just need to take the pledge.
And I don't need all of your approvals. Not that I would think I would not get your approvals, but okay, but I'm getting the general sense. I will do a letter.
You just take a pledge and respond to the email. I think that's all that's
okay.
That's all as well. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. As Steve Kenny had mentioned, we will be having our very first executive director at our REACH nonprofit. And I also want to mention that this Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11:30 in the morning at Miranda Park, we will be hosting a 3-point contest on the basketball courts. So just so you guys know, 9 a.m. to 11:30 on Sunday at Miranda Park.
Sunday, great. Have to get my finger rolled ready. Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of things, but I'm going to try to make them as brief as possible. As mentioned before, all of us have gone to are fairly excited about the STEM Robotics High School competition. I'm just going to make 2 call outs. One is Velma Lomax. She's the regional director for this for many, many years. And to her organizational ability, her excitement, getting all of these piles of high school teams together, just a call out for her for, volunteering her time for many years to make this thing all happen. The other one I'm going to mention is we had a personal tour leader bringing City Manager Connors and I around to see the various different projects and how they all went by. And that tour leader was a 11th grade girl from St. Bonaventure, and her name was Sarah Melisi. And if I have any faith in the future, she was so poised and she was so knowledgeable and she had such a positive attitude. And if all of the kids in the world were like her, we've got some good things to look forward to in the future. I went to the Little League opening day. There were 300 plus people. Some of the really neat things that we're having is the Navy operational unit. I guess these are the new Seabees, went out and assisted the Little League to make those fields look better than they have in years. They did a lot of great work and stuff like that. So call out to the Navy group that did that. A little personal note, the Navy commander threw the first pitch, but your mayor caught that first pitch. And I caught it with a baseball glove that I had when I was in 4th grade, a Rich Rollins glove. So a little fun point there. Gold Coast has hired, Gold Coast, our transportation bus service has hired a new executive director. Her name is Vanessa Rossenberger. She's a 12-year veteran of the organization. She came up through the ranks. She's got her master's in public administration. She's got a lot of great ideas. So I think Gold Coast is in good hands as we move forward. And let's see, we got a recent call from the Carmen Ramirez from the County Board of Supervisors. And they too had ARPA funds, and they're looking to work with the various different communities in their area to see if there's some way that they can utilize funds that would be mutually beneficial to the local cities. And so I'm going to be having a meeting with them at hopefully at a more future date. So please give your comments to our city manager if there's some areas that you think perhaps the county funds might be able to be of good use to our city of Port Hueneme. That's all I'm going to say tonight. It's been a long meeting.
You remind me of something really important that I forgot to mention, if I may.
Yes.
On this past Friday, a national treasure, military treasure, a Navy treasure, more importantly, a city of Port Hueneme original and treasure, the United States Seabees celebrated their 80th anniversary. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, great. So, and obviously they're at work at our local city working with our Little League. So that's really, really cool. Okay, so we are now into requests for future agenda items. I would like to remind council member that all requested items require a motion, a second, and a majority vote by the council to be placed on the future agenda. Do we have any requests? I'm looking at Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Do you have a request?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rollins. I've been approached with the idea of fire pits or bonfire pits at our beach. And I wanted to make a motion for our city staff to look into and doing research on the possibility of adding bonfire pits on our beach, maybe similar to those at Huntington Beach, or there's a lot of different examples, but those are some of the ones that I looked at.
So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilperson Perez. May we have a vote?
May I add a little bit of a portion to it, because we did have fire pits before. They were lost in when the beach went away and we lost the sidewalk and all that. And so not only did we lose the fire pit, but we lost I think 4 or 5 picnic areas on the beach. So
okay,
Pro Tem,
I
would you be okay with modifying that agenda just a little bit?
Do you want to make an amendment to it?
I just want to make sure Mayor Pro Tem's okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, with city staff to looking into and doing research on the possibility of adding bonfire pits and other how did you
Well, I don't think this is a point that we'd have discussion on that. Am I right? City Attorney Spalding would just have a motion and a second and a vote, and then the presentation will come later on.
That's correct, Mayor Rollins, and Councilmember Gama's concerns have been heard and noted. At this point, it seems like it's just a request for either a presentation item or kind of a memorandum, some research to be done. We can certainly incorporate Councilmember Gama's request as well.
Okay, so staff duly noted that Mr. Gama had some concerns to put that into the report.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. May we have a vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Any other requests for future agenda items? Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes, I have one more idea. Our business cards have our emails that don't show the easier emails. I think it'd be really good for all city staff to have those emails on their business cards, at least just to make it easier for the public, or whenever you hand somebody your business card. I'm not saying it has to be done now. We can wait till the appropriate time. But yeah, maybe looking into giving our business cards a facelift.
Okay, well, I don't think we need to have an agenda item on that, but I think it's duly noted. I think staff, City Manager Connors, did you get that kind of request? That doesn't require an agenda item, I don't think.
Yes, Mayor, I did. It kind of goes into a couple other versions of that the staff is working on, but thank you.
Okay, great. Well, the only request that I would have for a future agenda item is for staff to look into what the costs and the ramifications of readjusting the street sweeping to allow streets to be done on alternate days or at least alternate times, so that parking would be made available more readily to the community. Is that a second?
Sorry, is my mic not working right? Yes.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion by me and a second by Councilperson Perez. May we have a vote?
Mayor Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to adjourn the meeting at 10:16. Thank you all for sharing your comments tonight. I think it was a very productive meeting and some great things are happening for the city of Port Hueneme.
Thank you, staff. Good night, everyone.